Socrates. The human side of a philosophical giant. In ancient Athens, 5th century BC, a man strode barefoot through the vibrant streets of the city-state, relentlessly questioning those around him. His appearance starkly contrasted with the intellectuals and aristocrats of his time. This was Socrates, often called the father of Western philosophy. His life was far from the lofty image we associate with philosophers, shining instead through human struggles and real-world challenges. Given his philosophy's profound impact on Athenian society and Western thought, exploring his personal life is all the more significant. He was born around 470 BC in the Alapakadeem of Athens. His family was middle class, never wealthy. His father, Sophroniscus, was a sculptor or stonemason, and his mother, Phanerete, was a midwife. This background subtly but importantly shaped Socrates' life and philosophy. Drawing inspiration from his mother's profession, he named his unique method of questioning maieutic techne, intellectual midwifery. This approach was not about imparting knowledge, but about drawing out latent wisdom from others through dialogue. Records of Socrates' childhood are scarce, but he diligently pursued the education typical of Athens' young elites. He studied geometry, astronomy, music, and athletics, laying the intellectual foundation for his later profound philosophical inquiries. Yet he was no ivory tower scholar. Athens itself was his primary stage, and he rarely left it. His life was filled with constant conversations and debates with its citizens. A notable aspect of his life was his military service. Socrates fought in the Peloponnesian War, 431 to 404 BC. A conflict that defined Athens' fate. He served as an infantryman in the battles of Potidaea, Delium, and Amphipolis. According to Plato, he displayed remarkable courage and composure, marching barefoot even in winter's harsh cold, showcasing his physical resilience. These experiences likely influenced his understanding of reality and moral values. He fulfilled his duties as a citizen, serving his community faithfully. This may explain why his philosophy emphasized ethics and morality in the real world, not just abstract theory. Socrates' personal life, particularly his marriage, reveals his most human side. At the relatively late age of 50, he married Xanthippe and had 3 sons: Lamprocles, Sophroniscus, and Menexenus. Xanthippe is often remembered as the archetype of a nagging wife, her name still used to describe a scolding spouse. In Athenian society, women's roles centered on managing the household and raising children. Socrates, however, had little interest in earning a living, spending his days in philosophical discussions in Athens' agora. Naturally, this strained the family's finances, and Xanthippe likely voiced her frustrations over their economic struggles. Her pleas, "Stop philosophizing, earn some money," may have been desperate cries to sustain the family amid hardship. Socrates faced his wife's complaints with equanimity. He reportedly saw their conflicts as a training ground for patience. He once said, "To learn to handle a wild horse, you tame the wildest one. Just as to cultivate patience, you live with the most nagging wife." This anecdote shows his effort to maintain philosophical principles and inner calm in any situation. He was unshaken by external criticism or personal difficulties, turning every challenge into an opportunity for self-improvement. These traits, recorded by Plato and Xenophon, highlight his human side. Socrates was far from the arrogance or elitism of some intellectuals. He was approachable and friendly, engaging with all classes, from slaves to nobles, with equal respect. Calling himself an intellectual midwife, he used his distinctive method of questioning, known as the Socratic method, to help others recognize their ignorance, aporia, and uncover latent truth, aletheia. This process, like a midwife delivering a baby, was termed maieutique, midwifery. Through this method, he arrived at his famous realization, Hosa o koida ud oio mai idenai. I know that I know nothing. This, known as the Socratic paradox, warns against the arrogance of assuming complete knowledge. Socrates believed acknowledging one's ignorance was the start of true wisdom. This humility and relentless curiosity defined his life. Even in old age, he never shied away from learning, constantly questioning and exchanging ideas with others. His approach deeply impressed Athens' youth, who gathered around him. His philosophy was not merely theoretical but emphasized practical living. He pursued a pious and ethical life, valuing universal and objective moral principles. Through rational, critical, and reflective thinking, he examined the inner self, endlessly questioning what constitutes a good life. Above all, he strove to live according to his beliefs. His philosophy was his life, and he endeavored to align his actions with his principles. This inspired Athens' youth, who saw him as a mentor, laying the foundation for Western philosophy through disciples like Plato. However, Socrates' actions stirred controversy and conflict in Athenian society. By encouraging young people to question traditional values and social order, he faced criticism. Many of Athens' older generation believed he was corrupting the youth and destabilizing society. His free thinking and critical stance toward authority were seen as threats by conservative forces. This tension ultimately led to his tragic fate. The most dramatic moment in Socrates' life, and one of the most debated events in Western philosophy, was his trial and death. This event transcends the loss of one man, illuminating the strengths and flaws of Athenian democracy, and the relationship between philosophy and politics. Athens, reeling from defeat in the Peloponnesian War, 431 to 404 BC, faced severe social and political turmoil. The loss left Athenians wounded and disillusioned, amplifying doubts about traditional values and religious beliefs. In this unstable context, Socrates' bold critical thinking and influence on youth were perceived as threats. He was charged with 2 crimes, asabeia, impiety, and corrupting the youth. Specifically, he was accused of rejecting the state's gods, introducing a new divine entity, daimonion, and leading young people to distrust established authority. Socrates insisted his daimonion was not a new god, but an inner voice or divine sign guiding him, though this was not accepted by Athenians. Athenian trials differed greatly from modern systems. They were conducted by large juries of randomly selected citizens, not professional judges. In Socrates' case, around 501 jurors decided his fate. These laypeople were easily swayed by public sentiment. During the trial, Socrates refused to compromise his principles. Instead of pleading for mercy or defending himself conventionally, he argued his contributions to Athens, emphasizing the importance of truth-seeking for the city and its citizens. According to Plato's Apology, he used his Socratic method to challenge his accusers' claims. He argued he deserved not punishment but reward, claiming he should be honored with meals at the Prytaneum for teaching Athenians the meaning of virtue, arete. Even when offered a chance to propose a fine to avoid death, he provocatively suggested state honors, offending the jury. This stance likely appeared arrogant and uncooperative, contributing to his guilty verdict. Of the 501 jurors, 281 voted guilty. In the sentencing phase, an even larger margin chose death, reflecting how seriously Athens viewed his influence. Though sentenced to death, Socrates had ample opportunity to escape. His loyal disciples and friends arranged for him to flee to another city. Yet he firmly refused. He believed obeying the law, even an unjust one, was a citizen's duty. Having championed justice and law his entire life, he could not betray his principles by breaking it. He saw accepting death as the fulfillment of a virtuous life, rather than preserving his life through escape. This conviction is detailed in Plato's Crito. Facing death, Socrates remained calm. He drank the hemlock and died, steadfast in his beliefs. According to Plato's Phaedo, he discussed the soul's immortality with his disciples until his final moments. Passing peacefully, his death was not merely an end but a martyrdom for his philosophical principles. Socrates' trial and death remain one of the most debated events in Western philosophy, symbolizing the darker side of Athenian democracy. Witnessing his mentor's tragic end, Plato critiqued democracy's potential to devolve into ochlocracy, mob rule, without wise leaders and citizens. In works like The Republic, he explored ideal governance, advocating for philosopher kings. Socrates is interpreted in various ways, but his life and death profoundly shaped Western philosophy, influencing thinkers like Plato and Aristotle. The Socratic problem arises because he left no writings. His ideas preserved through Plato, Xenophon, and Aristotle. Debates persist about whether these accounts accurately reflect his thought, or include their authors' interpretations. Yet, amidst these discussions, Socrates' philosophical legacy and the symbolism of his life endure. Diogenes. The radical life of a cynic. In a dark corner of ancient Greece, a philosopher lived his life defying all standards and constraints, as if mocking the world. His name was Diogenes of Sinope, often called the Mad Socrates. He is recorded in history as the most radical and iconic figure of the Cynic school, the Kynikos. His life was a relentless challenge to societal norms and moral conventions, a continuous stream of shock and controversy. What kind of life did he lead to leave such a profound impression? By tracing his footsteps, we can glimpse the philosophical insights that shone through his shadowy existence. Diogenes was surprisingly born the son of a wealthy merchant. He grew up in a prosperous, stable environment, likely enjoying a comfortable childhood. But his life took a dramatic, destructive turn due to a single event, the coin forging scandal. The truth of this incident and his involvement remain debated, but it undeniably led to his exile from Sinope, losing all wealth, social status, and roots in his homeland. Diogenes became a wanderer. This event may have brought immense frustration, Yet paradoxically, it may have sown the seeds for the radical life and philosophy he pursued. His desire to live free from all worldly constraints likely stemmed from this experience of exile. He rejected not only the institution of family, but all artificial conventions binding humanity, such as marriage and the duty to provide. He had no spouse, no children, and no one to care for or be cared by. His comparison of himself to a dog, living like one, is well known. This was not merely a metaphor, but a philosophical declaration to cast off societal norms and hypocrisy, embracing a life true to natural instincts, eating, sleeping, and even defecating publicly without shame shocked and repulsed his contemporaries. Yet Diogenes was unfazed by societal judgment. He rejected all civilizational elements that suppressed natural instincts, pursuing the purest form of life. His radical lifestyle was a powerful critique of the moral hypocrisy and contradictions of Greek society. His only friend, or at least the most historically significant encounter, was with the young Alexander the Great. Even the mighty conqueror, wielding immense power, sought out Diogenes upon hearing his reputation. When Alexander visited and asked, "What can I do for you?" Diogenes, lounging in his large clay jar, calmly replied, "Stand out of my sunlight." This anecdote, famous from antiquity to today, vividly illustrates Diogenes' philosophy, refusing to bow to worldly power or wealth, prioritizing inner freedom and natural living. Unintimidated by Alexander's absolute authority, he asserted that his simple life was worth more than any empire's riches or power. This exchange contrasts two great figures, one seeking to rule the world, the other to escape its chains, encapsulating the essence of Diogenes' philosophy. Diogenes completely disregarded societal sexual norms, advocating free love. He performed sexual acts openly, without hesitation, defying strict conventions. He urinated in public, defecated without restraint, and hurled coarse insults, acting beyond common sense. These behaviors starkly showed his belief that societal norms and etiquette were meaningless shells suppressing human freedom. He sought a life true to the primal, animalistic instincts of humanity. To his contemporaries, these actions were shocking. But for Diogenes, they were the most direct and effective way to practice his philosophy. By openly embracing his physical desires and instincts, he exposed societal hypocrisy. Yet within this shocking, negative image lies an unexpected side of Diogenes. He lived his entire life in a large jar, practicing extreme minimalism. Without a proper home, content with minimal possessions. His life resonates with modern audiences trapped in materialism and endless desire. His existence critiqued society's relentless pursuit of wealth, showing that true happiness and satisfaction lie not in possessions. He chose a free, self-sufficient life over wealth or comfort. His jar was not just a dwelling but a philosophical space, isolating him from worldly constraints and enabling true freedom. He reportedly owned only one cloak, one staff, and one bowl. This extreme austerity stemmed from his belief that material possessions enslave and make humans unhappy. One of his most famous anecdotes is wandering Athens streets by day with a lantern, declaring, "I am looking for an honest man, seeking truth not in darkness but in broad daylight." where everything seems clear, highlights the paradox that honest people are hard to find in a hypocritical world. This reveals his sharp insight into societal pretense and falsehood. He saw through the polished manners and formalities hiding human nature, valuing truth and authenticity above wealth or honor. The lantern was not for illuminating truth in darkness, but for exposing hypocrisy in daylight. Diogenes is remembered and studied today because he was the founder and most extreme practitioner of Cynic philosophy. Cynicism emphasizes natural living, rejecting material desires, societal norms, and academic conventions. He was not merely a theorist but a philosopher who lived his beliefs fully. He firmly believed that living according to nature's order, free from artificiality, was humanity's true state. The name cynic, from the Greek kynikos, meaning dog-like, reflects his dog-like life, true to natural instincts. He saw civilization's progress as making humans unhappy, creating unnecessary desires. Thus, he advocated returning to a pre-civilized natural state, proving this through his life. He despised material wealth, seeing honor and power as worthless. These, he believed, hindered true happiness and freedom. His life was about abandoning everything to pursue inner freedom and self-sufficiency. His approach, so contrary to mainstream values, drew criticism and mockery. He was seen as an outcast, a social misfit. Yet he also shocked and inspired, opening new possibilities for thought. His radical actions and sharp insights left a deep mark on Athenian society. And his questions remain relevant today. His story will be remembered forever. Plato, the philosopher of ideals. Plato was born in 428 or 427 BC, or possibly 424 or 423 BC, into a prominent Athenian aristocratic family. The uncertainty surrounding his birth date illustrates the challenge of reconstructing ancient lives. His lineage traced back to the legendary Athenian king Codrus, and through his mother Perictione. He was linked to Solon, credited with laying the foundations of Athenian democracy. This heritage was more than a marker of social status. It naturally exposed him from childhood to politics, power, and Athens' core issues. Notably, his uncle Charmides and cousin Critias were key figures in the infamous 30 Tyrants, established after Athens' defeat in the Peloponnesian War. They executed numerous citizens and confiscated property during their brief, tyrannical rule. Witnessing this brutal political reality shaped Plato's lifelong preoccupation with the ideal state and just governance. His birth name was likely Aristocles, though this is uncertain. The name Plato, meaning broad in ancient Greek, may have been a nickname due to his broad forehead, shoulders, or intellectual capacity. As a child, Plato showed literary talent, reportedly composing tragic poetry. While it was common for aristocratic youths to receive literary education, his serious pursuit of poetry reveals a sensitive side, contrasting with the cold philosopher image. His brothers Adimantus and Glaucon were involved in politics, and his family's honor and tradition likely instilled political ambitions in him. He probably dreamed of a political career as an aristocratic youth. Plato's youth was far from the stereotypical bookish scholar. He was a quintessential Athenian noble, excelling in both arts and athletics. In ancient Greek society, physical training was as valued as intellectual pursuits. And Plato was no exception. He was an outstanding wrestler and even shone in pankration, a brutal mix of boxing and wrestling, a major Olympic event. Pankration allowed nearly all attacks, barring extreme acts like eye gouging, biting, or groin strikes, symbolizing Greek toughness and belligerence, though Plato reportedly viewed the sport critically. His participation and skill reveal his physical and mental strength, as well as his competitive spirit. He also served in the Peloponnesian War, gaining experience as a soldier. Military service was a civic duty for Athenians, but it allowed him to witness the horrors of war, prompting deep reflection on the state and citizens' roles. His youth thus combined literary sensitivity, athletic prowess, and a soldier's responsibility, embodying a versatile aristocratic ideal. The turning point in Plato's life, shaping his philosophical path, was meeting Socrates at age 20. Socrates roamed Athens' agora, questioning people, testing their knowledge, and practicing the maxim "know thyself." His critical philosophy, wisdom, and dialectical skill deeply inspired Plato, who became one of his most devoted and passionate disciples. Over 8 years under Socrates, Plato moved beyond mere knowledge acquisition to explore life's fundamental questions and truth. However, Socrates' trial and execution by Athenian democracy, for corrupting the youth and rejecting state gods, sentenced to death by hemlock, was a profound shock and disillusionment for Plato. This event led him to reject direct political participation, realizing that flawed, error-prone politics could not achieve true justice or goodness. Instead, he envisioned building an ideal state through philosophy, the concept of the philosopher king. After Socrates' death, Plato left Athens, traveling for about 12 years across Greece, Italy, and even Egypt, seeking knowledge. He was deeply influenced by the Pythagorean school in southern Italy, whose mathematical and metaphysical worldview shaped his theory of forms. After these extensive travels, he returned to Athens and around 387 BC founded the Academia, one of the first institutions of higher learning in history. The Academia was not just a place for teaching, but a comprehensive institution for studying philosophy, mathematics, astronomy, and ethics. Here, Plato trained students to seek truth, understand the world through reason, and grow into philosophers capable of realizing an ideal community. The Academia's establishment was a landmark in Western higher education, lasting about 900 years and profoundly influencing intellectual history. Plato never abandoned his desire to implement his philosophy in real politics. Despite his disillusionment after Socrates' death, he persistently tried to apply his idealistic vision. He made 3 dramatic, tragic attempts to test his political philosophy in Syracuse, Sicily. Around 388 BC, invited by the tyrant Dionysius I, Plato first visited Syracuse. He deeply influenced Dionysius' brother-in-law and heir, Dion, who was captivated by Plato's philosopher-king idea, and urged him to educate Dionysius I. However, Dionysius I found Plato's critical philosophy unsettling, and sold him into slavery. En route back to Athens, Plato was captured and auctioned in a slave market. But Cyrene's philosopher Aniceres, recognizing his fame, paid 20 minas, a fortune, to free him. This experience highlighted the harshness of political reality and tyrannical power. Yet it strengthened Plato's belief that true philosophy could save the state. Undeterred, Plato returned to Syracuse in 367 BC after Dionysius I's death. When his son Dionysius II became tyrant, at Dion's urging, Dion believed Plato could educate the new tyrant into an ideal ruler. Though hesitant, Plato saw it as a final chance to realize his philosophy. Dionysius II, however, was as tyrannical and unstable as his father. Ignoring Plato's advice and exiling Dion, Plato's second attempt failed, and he returned to Athens. His third attempt came in 361 BC, when Dionysius II urgently requested him. Encouraged by disciples like Speusippus and Hermias. Yet Dionysius II ignored Plato's teachings, nearly imprisoning him. With help from Archytas of Tarentum, Plato narrowly escaped Syracuse. These three failed attempts taught Plato the immense difficulty of applying ideal philosophy to politics, influencing his later, more pragmatic political philosophy in works like Laws. Interestingly, Plato's Republic envisions an ideal society, but has been criticized for endorsing or tacitly accepting slavery. In ancient Greece, slavery was a universal system. Slaves, from war captives to debt bondsmen, were considered living property or two-footed beasts, denied basic rights. They comprised a significant portion of Athens' population, performing grueling labor in agriculture, mining, households, and public works. Even intellectuals like Aristotle justified slavery in politics, claiming some were naturally suited to it. In Plato's ideal state, philosophers ruled, guardians protected, and producers met material needs. But he avoided explicitly addressing slaves' roles, implicitly accepting them as part of the state's order. He viewed slaves as functional within his ideal hierarchy, with little discussion of their liberation or rights. This reflects his philosophy's entanglement with his era's limits, showing that even the idealist Plato was not free from societal constraints. Despite his own enslavement experience, his lack of critique on slavery remains a contentious point in his philosophy. Little is recorded about Plato's personal life regarding love or marriage. He never married, leaving only speculation. Some believe he lived ascetically, devoted solely to philosophy and the academia, aligning with his philosophy's emphasis on spiritual over physical desires. Others suggest, based on Platonic love in his Symposium, which celebrates pure spiritual bonds between men, that he may have had homosexual inclinations. In ancient Greece, homosexual relationships, especially between older mentors and younger men, were socially accepted and often idealized as educational bonds. Thus, Plato's involvement in such relationships cannot be ruled out. But these are mere conjectures, as he never clarified his orientation or romantic life. Only fragmented accounts exist, and his life was primarily dedicated to philosophical ideals. Plato's famous allegory of the cave, in the Republic, is often interpreted as inspired by his enslavement experience. The allegory depicts humans chained in a cave, mistaking shadows on a wall for reality, until they escape to discover the true world of forms. The prisoners' plight may reflect Plato's own experience of captivity in Syracuse. symbolizing his journey from enslavement to freedom and philosophical truth. While speculative, this suggests his personal struggles fueled his philosophical insights. A deeply human drama. Plato died in 348 or 347 BC at 80, in the Academia, where he was buried. He devoted his life to seeking truth, envisioning an ideal society, and training disciples. His ideas formed the bedrock of Western philosophy, and the Academia produced figures like Aristotle, profoundly shaping intellectual history. Aristotle, the universal mind. Aristotle was born in 384 BC in Stagira, a small city in northern Greece. His father, Nicomachus, was the physician to King Amyntas II of Macedon. As the son of a royal doctor, he likely grew up in an exceptional educational environment. He was exposed to the finest knowledge and experiences of his time. This background fostered his deep interest in biology, anatomy, medicine, and other natural sciences. Young Aristotle likely inherited from his father a scientific curiosity for observing and analyzing the natural world. But in childhood, a shadow fell over him. Aristotle lost both parents, becoming an orphan. His exact age at the time is unknown, but scholars estimate he was in his early teens. Left alone, he was raised under the guardianship of Proxenus, a prominent figure in Stagira. Proxenus cared for him like a son and supported his studies in Athens. This personal tragedy may have been a catalyst for his later explorations of life, death, existence, and human suffering and happiness. The experience of loss in childhood cast a shadow on his philosophical thought, driving him to fiercely explore the finitude and meaning of life. His emphasis in Nicomachean ethics on happiness as life's ultimate goal may reflect an attempt to fill the void of his early loss. At 17, driven by a thirst for knowledge, Aristotle went to Athens. There, he joined Plato's Academy, the premier academic institution of the time. For about 20 years, he studied under Plato. Plato recognized Aristotle's extraordinary talent, calling him the mind of the Academy. Aristotle learned the foundations of philosophy, dialectical reasoning, and methods of inquiry from Plato. However, he did not blindly follow his teacher's ideas. He criticized Plato's theory of forms, particularly the concept of forms existing independently of the sensory world, saying, "The theory of forms is a poetic metaphor, not an explanation of actual existence." He began forging his own philosophical path, while Plato sought to explain reality through a transcendent world. Aristotle pursued truth through the study of the physical world itself. He sought universal essences within individual objects, laying the groundwork for his metaphysics and natural philosophy. His deep respect for Plato did not deter his relentless pursuit of truth, or his sharp critique of established ideas, marking him as one of the era's greatest intellects. This critical stance toward his teacher exemplifies the necessity of questioning for academic progress, highlighting Aristotle's independent and critical mind. After Plato's death, due to philosophical differences with the Academy's new head, Speusippus, Aristotle left Athens for Aterneus in Asia Minor. There, he was warmly received by the ruler Hermias and stayed for several years. This period was crucial for his immersion in biology and natural science. On Lesbos, he observed and collected various plants and animals, dedicating himself to taxonomic research. His works, History of Animals, On the Parts of Animals, reflect these efforts and laid the foundation for Western biology. A turning point came in 343 BC, when Philip II of Macedon invited Aristotle to tutor his young son, Alexander. Philip, aware of Aristotle's scholarly reputation, entrusted him with shaping Alexander into a great leader. For 3 years, Aristotle taught Alexander philosophy, ethics, politics, rhetoric, literature, and science. He reportedly used Homer's Iliad to instill heroic ideals and leadership virtues. Their bond was strong, and later, during his Persian campaigns, Alexander generously funded Aristotle's research, sending rare plants and animals from conquered lands. This support was pivotal in Aristotle's return to Athens, and the establishment of the Lyceum, where he produced vast scholarly achievements. The 3 years as Alexander's tutor profoundly shaped Aristotle's life. In the royal court, he witnessed the nature of politics and power firsthand, inspiring his later works, Politics and Ethics. Alexander's patronage enabled him to found the Lyceum, a leading academic institution, which systematized and spread his intellectual legacy. A key figure in Aristotle's personal life was his wife, Pythias. In his late 30s, he married Pythias, the adopted daughter of Hermias of Aterneus. Pythias was not only a life partner but an intellectual companion, assisting with organizing and transcribing his research materials, and serving as his first audience for philosophical ideas. They had a daughter, but sadly, Pythias died early. Aristotle honored her with a poem titled Pythias, reflecting his deep love and respect. After her death, he married Herpyllis, with whom he had a son, Nicomachus. His seminal work, Nicomachean Ethics, named after his son, is structured as a father teaching life's wisdom and virtues to his child, showing how much he valued family and education. His emphasis on personal happiness and community likely stemmed from these experiences. Aristotle's scientific approach is a cornerstone of his legacy. He conducted extensive animal dissections for academic inquiry. At the time, ethical considerations for animal life were minimal, and his works, History of Animals, On Generation of Animals, document detailed anatomical and physiological observations of over 500 species. These records are remarkably precise, comparable to modern biology. While such methods may seem cruel today, they were groundbreaking for scientific progress then. Beyond observation, he sought to understand organ functions and developmental processes, pioneering functional anatomy. He also studied plants, leaving detailed classifications and observations, revealing his role as an early botanist. His inquiries into life deepened his philosophical thought, reinforcing his metaphysical view of exploring the inherent purpose, telos, of all beings through nature's order. Aristotle also had an unexpected side as a culinarian. Not that he cooked, but he possessed deep knowledge of ingredients and food. This reflects his meticulous observation of natural phenomena, rooted in his biological expertise. In Greek society, food held aesthetic and philosophical significance beyond mere sustenance. Questions about food's effects on the body, or how cooking methods preserved ingredients' essence, were natural for intellectuals. Aristotle likely understood the origins, nutritional properties, and scientific principles of cooking, showing he was not just a speculative philosopher, but a practical thinker with insight into everyday life. With Alexander's support, Aristotle founded the Lyceum in Athens in 335 BC. More than a school, it was a comprehensive research institute with a library and zoo. Here, he established the Peripatetic school, named for his habit of discussing ideas while strolling the Lyceum's gardens. He taught philosophy, natural sciences, humanities, and social sciences, training numerous disciples. His lectures included in-depth philosophical discussions in the morning for scholars, and public talks in the afternoon. The Lyceum was a hub for collaborative research and knowledge production in ancient Greece. But his life was not without challenges. In 323 BC, Alexander's sudden death in Babylon sparked anti-Macedonian sentiment in Athens. As a prominent figure tied to Macedon, Aristotle faced accusations of impiety, a serious threat given Socrates' execution for the same charge. To prevent Athenians from sinning against philosophy twice, he fled to Chalcis, his mother's hometown. This decision, evoking Socrates' tragedy, reflected his resolve to protect both his life and philosophy's honor. Aristotle died in 322 BC at 62 from a stomach illness. His death marked the end of an era in Western philosophy. He left an immense body of work, though only about a third survives. Scholars estimate he wrote around 400 works, and even the surviving texts have profoundly shaped Western thought. His lecture-based writings, meant for the Lyceum, can be dense for general readers, yet they span logic, metaphysics, ethics, politics, natural science, rhetoric, poetics, biology, and zoology, influencing countless fields. He systematized logic with his organon, including categories, on interpretation, prior analytics, and posterior analytics, foundational to logic studies. His Nicomachean Ethics explores happiness and the good life, shaping virtue ethics. With Socrates and Plato, he is one of Western philosophy's three giants, hailed as the father of all sciences and the philosopher. Epicurus, the misunderstood seeker of tranquility. In ancient Greek philosophy, one figure faced immense misunderstanding and prejudice, Epicurus. His name was often tied to hedonism, and people unhesitatingly called him the pig philosopher. Was he merely a vulgar philosopher chasing sensual pleasures? Tracing his life reveals a truth far different from common perceptions, full of unexpected twists. Let us delve deeply into the hidden face of Epicurus and his philosophical journey. In 341 BC, a child was born on the small island of Samos in the Aegean Sea. His name was Epicurus. His parents were ordinary Athenian citizens. His father a schoolteacher, living in modest circumstances. Young Epicurus learned early the hardships and weight of reality. At 14, a fateful encounter changed his life, his meeting with philosophy. Frustrated by teachers' inability to clearly explain the concept of chaos in Hesiod's epic poetry, young Epicurus developed a fierce resolve to seek answers himself. This seemingly minor moment became the decisive spark leading him to philosophy. He studied under Pamphilus of the Platonic school for 4 years. Deeply captivated by the atomism of Democritus, the era's leading atomist. Democritus' atomism became a cornerstone for Epicurus' own philosophical system. At 18, Epicurus went to Athens, dutifully completing 2 years of military service, a mandatory rite of passage for Athenian men. After his service, he moved to Colophon, reuniting with his scattered family. There, he studied under Nausiphanes, a naturalist philosopher, further honing his philosophical foundation. Epicurus' youth was not about staying in one place, but a passionate journey of absorbing knowledge, seeking new teachers to quench his endless thirst for truth. These wanderings and studies were essential nourishment for developing his unique philosophy. At 32, Epicurus no longer sought only to learn, but dreamed of creating a community to realize his philosophical ideals. He briefly ran schools in Mytilene and Lampsacus on Lesbos. But he was convinced Athens was the ideal place to bring his ideas to life. Around 306 BC, he purchased land on Athens' outskirts, founding the Garden, Kapos, a unique and radical philosophical community. The Garden was more than a school. It was the living heart of Epicurus' philosophy, and a revolutionary experiment breaking societal norms. It embraced women, slaves, and even prostitutes, considered society's lowest class, without discrimination. In male-dominated Greece, women were excluded from public life, slaves were treated as property, and prostitutes were despised. Epicurus' inclusive garden sparked fierce controversy and criticism in conservative Athens. People accused him of destroying social norms and morality, branding him a dangerous heretic. Unfazed, Epicurus proclaimed friendship as the noblest and most vital value, believing true happiness could only be found in a community transcending class, gender, and status. The Garden was not just a place for philosophical debates. It was a space for sharing simple, warm meals and open, heartfelt exchanges. He cared for his students like his own children, even looking after their offspring and bequeathing his legacy to them, showing remarkable humanity for the time. This community life was a concrete expression of his philosophy, and a testament to his warm, inclusive leadership. The core pillar of Epicurus' philosophy is hedonism. But we must clarify a crucial misunderstanding. His hedonism was not about chasing worldly, sensual pleasures or living a debauched life. For Epicurus, true pleasure meant aponia, the absence of bodily pain, and ataraxia, tranquility of mind. He valued not the endless pursuit of desires but the peaceful, stable state achieved by removing unnecessary pain and mental distress. His simple, disciplined lifestyle reflected this. He lived frugally, claiming bread and water were enough for satisfaction, jokingly telling friends, "With a piece of cheese, I can experience divine ecstasy." This frugality and self-sufficiency contrasted sharply with the era's opulent aristocratic culture, making him a target of criticism. Epicurus taught that reducing unnecessary desires and living simply in harmony with nature was the surest path to true pleasure and happiness. He also offered a clear solution to one of humanity's deepest fears, fear of death. Building on Democritus' atomism, he viewed the world as composed of indivisible atoms. Both body and soul were temporary combinations of these atoms. Death, he argued, was merely the scattering of these atoms, after which no consciousness or sensation remained. His famous saying, "Death is nothing to us, for when we are, death is not. And when death is, we are not," encapsulates his profound insight and comfort, aiming to root out humanity's deep-seated fear of death. By understanding death as a process of atomic rearrangement, he sought to eliminate anxiety about it. His view of gods was also radical for his time. He did not deny their existence but saw them as perfect, happy beings uninvolved in human affairs. Gods neither punished nor rewarded human actions, freeing people from fear of divine wrath or judgment. This revolutionary stance in a society dominated by religious beliefs highlighted Epicurus' independent thought. At 72, Epicurus suffered intense pain from kidney stones for 14 days, dying in 270 BC. His final moments vividly illustrate the strength and practicality of his philosophy. On his deathbed, he soaked in a bronze tub of warm water prepared by his students, sipped sweet wine, and wrote a final letter. It reportedly said, "Even in this painful moment, I am filled with joy. Remember my teachings and continue the love and friendship I leave behind." Despite excruciating physical pain, he maintained mental tranquility, facing death with grace, embodying the aponia and ataraxia he preached. His life and death were powerful proof of his philosophy. Though branded with the stigma of pig philosophy and facing much criticism, Epicurus' ideas thrived for 600 years through the Hellenistic period and Roman Empire, deeply influencing intellectuals and the public. His philosophy is not a mere relic. It continues to impact modern fields like natural philosophy, egalitarian thought, and minimalism, emphasizing mental satisfaction over material wealth. Notably, Karl Marx's doctoral dissertation explored the difference between the natural philosophy of Democritus and Epicurus, underscoring the timeless universality of Epicurus' thought. Seneca, the complex Stoic. It is time to explore the complex life of Lucius Annaeus Seneca, one of ancient Rome's most influential philosophers. Beyond the familiar image of a cold, austere Stoic, we will uncover the hidden facets of his life, his personal struggles, contradictions, and the turbulent events he faced in a dynamic era. Let us dive deep into this exploration. Seneca was born around 4 BC in Córdoba, Hispania, a significant province of the Roman Empire. His family belonged to the distinguished equestrian class, possessing considerable wealth and social status. This background provided Seneca with access to the finest education from childhood. He moved to Rome early, studying rhetoric and philosophy under the era's greatest scholars. However, Seneca suffered from poor health, particularly asthma, worsened by the Mediterranean climate. He often traveled to Egypt for recovery. Frequent illness and physical pain likely shaped his inner world, leading him to recognize life's fragility and human weakness early on. This may have manifested in his Stoic philosophy's calm acceptance of death and suffering. His pursuit of an unyielding spirit despite a frail body resonates with modern audiences. His family was a hub of intellect and literary talent. His father, Lucius Annaeus Seneca Major, known as Seneca the Elder, was a renowned rhetorician and historian. His writing prowess was passed down to Seneca, who later excelled as an orator, playwright, and philosopher. Seneca had two brothers, Gallio, who served as governor of Achaia and appears in the Acts of the Apostles, and Aeneas Mela, a key financial official and writer. The family's achievements across various fields highlight Seneca's exceptional background. The most pivotal figure in Seneca's life was Nero Claudius Caesar Augustus Germanicus, the infamous fifth Roman emperor. Nero ascended the throne young, lacking political experience. Seneca, as his tutor and trusted advisor, wielded immense influence over his education and the empire's governance. During the early years of Nero's reign, known as the Quinquennium Neronis, Seneca guided a period of stability and prosperity. Rooted in Stoic ideals, he advocated for an ideal ruler, improving Roman administration and public welfare through tax and judicial reforms. Seneca likely strove to implement his philosophical beliefs in politics. But this teacher-student relationship did not last. As Nero grew intoxicated by power and descended into tyranny, ignoring Seneca's advice, he committed atrocities like murdering his mother Agrippina and wife Octavia. Despite Seneca's efforts to curb Nero's excesses, he realized his influence was futile and chose to retire from public life. In his work De Clementia, Seneca had outlined an ideal ruler. But he painfully learned how difficult it was to realize this in reality. The tragic collapse of their relationship underscores the fragility of human bonds in the face of absolute power. Delving into Seneca's personal life, he married twice. His first wife bore him a son, but little is recorded about her. His second wife, Paulina, showed deep love and devotion, visiting him during exile. She likely served as his intellectual and emotional anchor. Intriguingly, rumors of an affair with Nero surfaced, though historical evidence suggests these were unfounded, possibly stemming from misinterpretations of his complex relationship with Nero's mother, Agrippina, or political smear campaigns. Agrippina reinstated Seneca to secure Nero's throne, but no clear evidence supports romantic ties. Still, Seneca was not a flawless ascetic. He was among Rome's wealthiest, amassing around 300 million sesterces, equivalent to billions today. He owned vast lands, properties, and profited from finance, reportedly enjoying a lavish lifestyle with luxurious villas, fine art, and extravagant banquets. Ironically, as a Stoic preaching austerity and detachment from materialism, his wealth and lifestyle appeared hypocritical to some. Why did he pursue such wealth while advocating restraint? Was it mere hypocrisy, or a balance between philosophical ideals and practical life? Seneca likely did not view wealth as inherently evil. Stoicism considers externals like wealth and fame adiaphora, neither good nor bad. What matters is how they are used. Seneca may have believed in using wealth wisely to practice virtue, benefit society, and sustain his philosophical work, controlling it rather than being controlled by it. This reflects his insight that wealth does not negate virtue, nor poverty ensure it. Seneca also had an unexpected side as a tragedian. He wrote 10 tragedies, forming the genre of Senecan tragedy, often based on Greek myths, exploring revenge and tragic family sagas with brutal, violent themes. Blood, vengeance, murder, and madness permeate his plays. delving into human anguish, moral dilemmas, and fate through a Stoic lens. They mirror Rome's dark, violent undercurrents while probing the depths of human nature. Perhaps through these dramas, Seneca sought to convey his philosophy to the masses, warning against irrational emotions and destructive impulses. His role as a playwright reveals his versatility and artistic sensibility. The most dramatic and symbolic episode of Seneca's life is his death. In AD 65, the Pisonian conspiracy, a plot to assassinate Nero and install Gaius Calpurnius Piso as emperor, shook Rome. When it was uncovered, Nero accused Seneca of involvement and ordered his suicide. According to historian Tacitus, Seneca accepted the command calmly, bidding farewell to his wife Paulina and friends with composure. Embodying Stoic teachings, in Roman culture, suicide was often an honorable death, and Stoicism viewed ending life by one's will as noble. As described in De Brevitate Vitae and other works, Seneca faced death serenely, cutting his veins and awaiting it in a bath, as if following his own philosophical guide to dying. His death, a symbol of Nero's tyranny and a Stoic's acceptance of fate, left a lasting mark on history. Seneca is best remembered today for his Epistulae Moralis ad Lucilium, or Stoic letters, 124 letters to his friend and student Lucilius. These letters encapsulate Stoic philosophy and practical wisdom, addressing life's essence, death's meaning, coping with pain and anxiety, virtuous living, friendship, and just actions. Written in a clear, persuasive style, they make complex concepts accessible, inspiring and comforting readers across time. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor. Today, we explore the hidden life of Marcus Aurelius, one of Rome's greatest emperors and a complex philosopher. Behind the familiar image as the author of Meditations and a Stoic exemplar lies a man haunted by family troubles and a plague-ravaged empire. Let us step into his life. Marcus Aurelius was born on April 26, 121, in Rome. His father died when Marcus was only 3, a profound loss that shaped his early years. Raised by his mother and devoted grandfather, he came from the distinguished Aurelius family, of Italian Gallic descent, one of Rome's elite noble families. From childhood, he displayed remarkable intelligence and maturity, catching the eye of Emperor Hadrian. Gaining an emperor's notice was among the greatest honors in Rome. When Hadrian's chosen heir, Aelius Caesar, died suddenly in 138, Hadrian faced a dilemma. He named Marcus's uncle, Antoninus Pius, as his successor. In a fateful decision, Antoninus adopted Marcus and Lucius Verus as his heirs, per Hadrian's directive. At just 17, Marcus unknowingly entered the line of imperial succession. A monumental turning point. No longer just a noble, he was on a path to become Rome's supreme ruler. His life became intertwined with the empire's destiny, a shift from personal to historical significance. This adoption was not merely a family matter, but a pivotal political decision shaping Rome's future, the prelude to Marcus's trials and triumphs. In 145, he married Antoninus Pius' daughter, Annia Galeria Faustina. As the emperor's daughter and future empress, Faustina was renowned for her beauty and intellect but also a controversial figure. They had 13 children, though high infant mortality, common in Roman society, claimed 8. Only 1 son and 4 daughters reached adulthood. Their son, Commodus, later became emperor, marking a critical turning point in Rome's history. Faustina brought Marcus love and joy but also deep anguish and public scrutiny. Rumors of her extravagance and infidelity, including alleged affairs with gladiators, and claims that Commodus was not Marcus's son, plagued her reputation. These rumors fueled gossip and undermined the imperial family's authority. Remarkably, Marcus steadfastly refused to believe these accusations, publicly expressing unwavering love and respect for his wife. After her death, he persuaded the Senate to deify her. Despite his philosophical composure as emperor, Marcus likely struggled as a husband, torn between faith in his wife and public judgment. His family life was not simple happiness, but a test of patience and trust amid challenges and rumors. Marcus had a lifelong mentor, close friend, and intellectual guide in Marcus Cornelius Fronto, the era's foremost rhetorician. Fronto taught him rhetoric, Greek, Latin literature, and philosophy from childhood, profoundly shaping his intellectual growth. Their relationship went beyond teacher and student, marked by deep friendship and surviving letters that reveal Marcus's inner world and humanity. Fronto imparted not just knowledge but wisdom, insight, and resilience for life's challenges. In the solitude of his imperial role, Fronto's companionship offered solace and support. Marcus's ability to articulate Stoic principles in Meditations owed much to Fronto's early philosophical and literary training. Fronto equipped him with the inner strength to bear the burdens of emperorship. Despite ruling during the golden age of the 5 good emperors, Marcus's reign was marred by numerous hardships. In 161, after Antoninus Pius' death, Marcus began an unprecedented co-emperorship with Lucius Verus. This novel arrangement aimed to govern Rome's vast territories efficiently, with both sharing equal power. Though unfamiliar to Romans, Marcus strove to make it work. The co-emperorship ended in 169 when Verus died suddenly, leaving Marcus to rule alone. Then, the empire faced its greatest calamity, the Antonine Plague. From around 165, this devastating plague, brought back by soldiers from the Parthian War, swept through the empire. Historical estimates suggest it killed 1/3 of the population, between 5 and 10 million people, a staggering toll. Lucius Verus likely died from it in 169. The plague engulfed cities and villages in fear, chaos, and despair. Streets were littered with bodies, agriculture collapsed, and the Roman army faced severe manpower shortages. As emperor, Marcus bore immense responsibility. Beyond containing the plague, he worked tirelessly to prevent societal collapse and calm public unrest. He intervened in corpse disposal to address sanitation, funded funerals for the poor, an innovative and humane measure, and sold imperial assets to replenish the treasury, prioritizing public welfare over personal wealth, a Stoic act. To address army shortages, he even conscripted gladiators. Amid plague and war, Marcus balanced Stoic reason with imperial duty, a period that tested and showcased his leadership. His reign, though marked by plague and war, was also shadowed by controversy over Christian persecution. Some ancient sources claim Marcus oppressed Christians, who, unlike Rome's polytheistic tradition, worshipped a single god and rejected state religion. During the plague, Christians' communal care contrasted with Roman despair, clashing with traditional values. Some blamed Christians for angering the gods, fueling public distrust and local persecutions. However, evidence that Marcus directly ordered widespread persecution is scarce. Some historians argue he maintained Stoic rationality, with persecutions driven by local governors or public pressure. Regardless, his reign was a time of religious tension and social unrest. Despite being a peace-loving philosopher, Marcus also had to be a ruthless war commander. The Marcomannic Wars plagued his reign, as Germanic tribes like the Marcomanni, Quadi, and Sarmatians invaded across the Danube. He led armies in grueling, protracted campaigns, sometimes ordering merciless suppression. These actions, necessary for Rome's safety, likely caused inner conflict for a philosopher valuing peace, highlighting the paradox of his role. The wars cast a shadow over his life and philosophy, influencing his writing of Meditations. Amid chaos and stress, Marcus sought inner peace through a unique practice, writing Meditations, his immortal personal diary. In desolate war tents or his palace study, he reflected late into the night by candlelight, grounding himself in Stoic teachings. Meditations is not a mere chronicle but a record of spiritual discipline, a dialogue with himself to find wisdom amid adversity. It candidly captures his reflections on life's meaning, overcoming pain, attitudes toward death, and relationships, offering timeless insights. A global classic, it reveals the inner world of a Stoic emperor striving for reason and virtue. Meditations proves Marcus was not just a ruler, but a true philosopher seeking wisdom beyond his era. Marcus Aurelius died in 180, ending the glorious era of the five good emperors. His most controversial legacy, regretted by many historians, was naming his son Commodus as successor. Unlike his philosophical father, Commodus became a notorious tyrant, leading Rome into decline. Many consider this Marcus's greatest mistake, speculating a different successor might have altered Rome's fate. However, blood succession was a strong tradition, and Commodus' tyrannical traits were not evident at the time. Marcus diligently trained his son, hoping he would lead well. Did Marcus fail to foresee his son's flaws? Or was it an unavoidable choice for stability? His decision profoundly shaped Rome's history, remaining a subject of debate. René Descartes, the father of modern philosophy. Let us delve deeply into the story of a genius, known as the father of modern philosophy, who profoundly shaped Western thought. René Descartes was born on March 31, 1596. In La Haye-en-Touraine, a small village in France's Touraine region, now renamed Descartes in his honor. His legacy is firmly rooted in French history and culture. His father was a capable lawyer at Brittany's High Court. From a distinguished legal family, Descartes had older siblings who followed their father's path into law. However, René showed exceptional intellectual curiosity and depth from a young age, choosing not law but the path of philosophy and science. His mother tragically died of tuberculosis a year after his birth. Likely inheriting her frail constitution, Descartes was sickly in childhood. This fragility may have driven him to retreat from the world's noise and focus on inner reflection. Instead of mingling with peers, he bonded closely with his nurse and a cross-eyed girl, Françoise. These relationships went beyond mere acquaintance, as he later shared his inheritance with his nurse, and maintained a lifelong friendship with Françoise, hinting at the deep bonds in his heart. At 10, Descartes entered La Flèche Jesuit College, one of France's premier schools, for a decade. Known for its rigorous yet progressive curriculum, the college taught traditional scholastic logic, ethics, and metaphysics, alongside emerging physics, Euclidean geometry, and algebra. Here, he encountered Galileo's latest achievements, sparking his shift from classical knowledge to new scientific inquiry. He honed systematic thinking and logical reasoning, laying the foundation for his future as a great philosopher and scientist. In 1618, at 22, Descartes joined the army of Maurice of Nassau in the Netherlands as an officer. An unusual choice. Unsatisfied with mere soldiering, his intellectual passion persisted. He studied ballistics, acoustics, and perspective, advancing military and scientific research. Meeting Dutch mathematician Isaac Beeckman was a turning point. Beeckman taught him to apply mathematical methods to practical problems, inspiring Descartes' later creation of analytic geometry. His intellectual horizons expanded through this unique military experience. One of the most fascinating and dramatic episodes of his life occurred in the winter of 1619. While serving in Germany, in a warm, secluded room, Descartes had 3 mystical dreams. He later recorded that these dreams revealed insights, including the idea of the coordinate plane, shaping his future philosophy and mathematics. This inspiration led to analytic geometry, a miraculous moment where dreams birthed reality. The event solidified his scholarly mission, forever altering his life's course. In 1628, nearing 40, Descartes made a pivotal decision to move to the Netherlands. Unlike France, the Netherlands offered political and religious freedom due to the Reformation. He saw this as the ideal environment for undisturbed philosophical and scientific work. For over 20 years, he lived a near-reclusive life, free from external distractions, focusing solely on intellectual pursuits. During this period, he produced his seminal works, Discourse on the Method and Meditations on First Philosophy, which transformed Western philosophy's paradigm and immortalized him. His most famous and revolutionary proposition is, cogito, ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. This arose from his methodological doubt, rigorously questioning everything to find undeniable truth, no matter how much he doubted. The act of doubting affirmed the existence of the doubting self. This proposition laid the foundation for modern Western philosophy, and the concept of the autonomous, rational subject central to Enlightenment thought. As a champion of rationalism, Descartes argued that sensory experiences can deceive, and only rational thought leads to truth. His resolve to seek truth through pure reason was unwavering. His mathematical contributions were equally monumental. By uniting algebra and geometry, he founded analytic geometry, the Cartesian coordinate system, expressing points as numerical pairs like x, y, and representing geometric shapes as algebraic equations, created a new paradigm for solving mathematical problems. This revolutionized fields like physics and astronomy. He also introduced Descartes' rule of signs, predicting the number of positive and negative roots in polynomials, a major contribution to pure mathematics. His insights shaped the foundation of scientific thought. However, his philosophy faced criticism. He advocated mind-body dualism, viewing the mind and body as separate entities. While useful for discussing the soul's immortality, this perspective sometimes reduced living beings to mere machines. He notoriously regarded animals as complex machines without consciousness or pain, endorsing vivisection experiments. From a modern view, this stance raises ethical concerns about animal cruelty, highlighting the dangers of extreme anthropocentric thinking. Though known as a lifelong bachelor, Descartes had a hidden, human secret. He had a long relationship with his maid, Helena Jans van der Stroom, with whom he had a daughter, Francine. He cherished her deeply, openly acknowledging her despite her illegitimacy, and invested in her education. Tragically, Francine died of scarlet fever at 5, leaving Descartes devastated. Some scholars suggest this loss subtly influenced his philosophy, including mind-body dualism and proofs of God's existence. Ironically, Descartes was a devout Roman Catholic. He sought to prove God's existence rationally, with God holding a central place in his philosophy. His view of God as a creator who designed the universe like a machine, but ceased intervening, resembling deism, diverged from traditional Christianity. This blend of faith and scientific reasoning defined his thought. In 1649, Descartes' life took a new turn when Sweden's young Queen Christina invited him to Stockholm to tutor her in philosophy. Her intellectual curiosity drew her to his fame. But Sweden's harsh winter and her 5 a.m. lesson schedule were brutal for the frail Descartes. Accustomed to warm climates and late mornings, his health deteriorated rapidly, and on February 11, 1650, he succumbed to pneumonia in Stockholm. His untimely death, before fully completing his philosophical work, remains a profound loss to Western philosophy. John Locke, the father of liberalism. John Locke was born in 1632 in Rington, a small village in Somerset, England. His father, a lawyer and small landowner, provided a relatively stable middle-class upbringing. However, Locke's family was steeped in strict Puritan faith, fostering a moral and disciplined atmosphere. His father served as a cavalry captain in the Parliamentary Army during the Puritan Revolution, placing him at the heart of a turbulent era. This influence exposed young Locke to the political upheaval and religious conflicts of his time. He attended Westminster School, a prestigious institution, studying classical literature, philosophy, and rhetoric, building his academic foundation. Later, at Christ Church, Oxford, he delved deeper into traditional scholastic philosophy, as well as emerging fields like medicine, natural science, and experimental science. These studies laid the groundwork for his empiricist philosophy. His academic years were not just about acquiring knowledge, but about cultivating critical thinking and diverse perspectives. Though outwardly a dedicated scholar, Locke's life took a pivotal turn in 1666 in London with a fateful meeting. He encountered Anthony Ashley Cooper, Earl of Shaftesbury, a leading Whig politician. Impressed by Locke's intellect, Shaftesbury appointed him as his personal physician, secretary, and trusted political advisor. This relationship transformed Locke's life and thought. Living in Shaftesbury's household, he witnessed English politics firsthand. Moving beyond theory, his exposure to the realities of politics shaped his ideas, giving them a practical foundation. Works like two treatises of government and a letter concerning toleration emerged from these experiences. Not by chance, Shaftesbury's patronage offered more than financial stability, providing Locke access to England's leading intellectuals and politicians. These interactions enriched his thought. Yet, Locke's life had its shadows alongside its achievements. He remained a bachelor, never forming a family, a rare choice for his era that invites varied interpretations. Some argue he chose singledom to focus on scholarship and politics, free from family responsibilities. Others speculate it reflected inner loneliness or difficulties in relationships. While no definitive answer exists, his solitary life was a defining trait, likely influencing his thought subtly. The most shocking and controversial shadow in Locke's life is his deep involvement in the slave trade. Hailed as the father of liberalism, his investment in and support for slavery shocks and betrays many. This raises fundamental questions about his philosophical integrity. From 1672 to 1675, Locke served as secretary to the Board of Trade and Plantations. Deeply engaged in England's colonial policies, he held stock in the notorious Royal African Company, which brutally abducted Africans for forced labor in the West Indies. His role was significant, beyond mere investment. He played a key part in drafting the fundamental constitutions of Carolina, which explicitly legalized and perpetuated slavery, stating, "Every freeman shall have absolute power and authority over slaves." This starkly contradicts the natural rights to life, liberty, and property he championed in two treatises of government, earning accusations of hypocrisy. How could a philosopher of freedom and rights actively support a system denying them? Understanding his actions requires considering the 17th century context of European imperialism and the slave trade's economic role, as well as the limitations of intellectuals of the time. Yet, even with this context, his stance is indefensible today, serving as a critical lens for evaluating his legacy. This controversy underscores that Locke's thought cannot be viewed solely through an idealistic lens, revealing the gap between ideals and reality, and the era's darkness even in a great thinker. Locke was also a physician. He studied medicine extensively at Oxford, and famously saved Shaftesbury's life by successfully treating a severe liver cyst through complex surgery. This medical experience shaped his scientific mindset and empiricist philosophy. He moved beyond speculative thought, embracing observation and experimentation, likely honed through medicine. However, his medical work sometimes concealed political intrigue. He secretly met political allies, exchanging information, and sustained himself through medical practice during exile. His physician role not only brought social prestige, but also served as a cover for political activities when needed. His medical knowledge and practice show he was not just a philosopher, but a practical, engaged scholar. Locke's life was marked by repeated threats of death and political crises. His association with Shaftesbury, who opposed Charles II in the Rye House plot, made Locke a target of political persecution. Shaftesbury was charged with treason and fled to the Netherlands. And Locke, linked to him, faced danger. In 1683, to save his life, he fled to the Netherlands. Under Charles II and James II's absolutist rule, Locke endured 5 painful years of exile, during which he wrote his major works: an essay concerning human understanding, 2 treatises of government, and a letter concerning toleration. Awaiting England's political transformation, exile offered deep reflection, strengthening and systematizing his thought. He engaged with new ideas and intellectuals, further developing his philosophy. In 1688, the Glorious Revolution ousted James II. And William III and Mary II ascended as joint monarchs, transforming the political landscape. In 1689, Locke returned to England with hope for a new era. Offered key government posts by William III's administration, he declined, citing frail health and a desire to focus on scholarship. He spent his later years at the country home of his lifelong friend, Lady Masham, continuing research and writing. His exile and return were not just personal experiences, but tied to England's political turning point. Locke's enduring fame as a great philosopher stems from his revolutionary liberal ideas. In 2 treatises of government, he fiercely rejected the divine right of kings, arguing that government authority derives solely from the consent of the governed. This was a radical claim for its time. He believed all humans are born with inalienable natural rights to life, liberty, and property, which no government or monarch can violate. The government's primary role is to protect these rights. If it fails or infringes them, citizens have the right of rebellion to establish a new government. These ideas profoundly influenced the French Revolution's Declaration of the Rights of Man, and the American Declaration of Independence, forming the bedrock of modern democracy, popular sovereignty, and human rights. In a letter concerning toleration, he championed religious freedom, arguing that the state must not impose religion or discriminate based on beliefs. This progressive stance, amid Europe's religious conflicts, laid the foundation for modern religious pluralism and tolerance. Locke's views on education are equally noteworthy. In some Thoughts Concerning Education, he criticized rote learning and corporal punishment. He argued education should focus not just on knowledge, but on fostering moral character, rational thinking, and physical health. His famous claim, tabula rasa, posits the human mind as a blank slate at birth, with all knowledge and experience formed through sensory input and reflection. This empiricist stance, opposing rationalists like Descartes who emphasized innate ideas, underscored education's importance. Locke's life, marked by political exile, his complex ties with Shaftesbury, lifelong bachelorhood, and controversial slave trade involvement, reflects both brilliance and shadows. His thought shaped modern democracy and human rights. But understanding his darker aspects, especially on slavery, allows a more nuanced, critical view of this towering figure. David Hume, the skeptical philosopher. David Hume was born on April 26, 1711, in Chirnside, near Edinburgh, Scotland, to lawyer John Hume. His family was not wealthy but fostered a scholarly environment. From childhood, Hume displayed extraordinary academic talent, entering the prestigious University of Edinburgh at 12. There, he absorbed Greek classics, logic, metaphysics, and Newton's revolutionary natural philosophy, soaking up the era's greatest intellectual achievements. After 2 years, disenchanted with formal education, he boldly quit university. Returning home, he rejected institutional learning, vowing to pursue writing and philosophy through self-study. This shocked his family, especially his mother, who expected him to follow his father's stable path as a lawyer. His siblings, from a prominent aristocratic family, made his choice seem even more radical. This decision marked the start of hardship. After leaving university, Hume suffered severe nervous breakdowns and mental distress. Physically frail, he called this period his scholar's disease, enduring it with difficulty, briefly working at a Bristol sugar trading company to sustain himself. He found the mundane commercial life stifling. His philosophical passion unquenched, he resolved to write again. At 24, he left everything behind for La Flèche, France, where Descartes had studied at the historic Jesuit college. Its serene setting allowed him to focus solely on philosophical reflection and writing. This period shaped his life's singular pursuit of philosophy, laying the foundation for his major works. In France, through intense reflection and dedicated writing, he completed his magnum opus, a treatise of human nature. This ambitious work sought to present a new science of man based on experience and observation. Hume analyzed the origins of human knowledge, emotions, and morality empirically. Published between 1739 and 1740. The book faced utter indifference from the public and academia. Hume himself called it a book dead from birth, deeply discouraged by its failure. This rejection not only brought profound disappointment, but also branded him an atheist due to his radical ideas, a stigma that haunted him lifelong, repeatedly thwarting his academic appointments. Ironically, a treatise is now regarded as one of Western philosophy's most profound texts, influencing later thinkers like Kant. Unrecognized in his time, its value emerged with time. Despite a treatise's failure, Hume persevered. Undeterred by academic rejections and financial struggles, his intellectual zeal endured. To make his ideas accessible, he published an enquiry concerning human understanding in 1748, simplifying a treatise. This work explored the principles of human knowledge, laying the foundation for his groundbreaking theory of causation. He argued causation is not a necessary connection, but a habit from repeated experience, shaking the intellectual world. In 1751, an enquiry concerning the principles of morals proposed that moral judgments stem not from reason, but from universal human emotions, particularly sympathy for others' suffering. This ethical relativism, distinct from rationalist predecessors, paved the way for Bentham and Mill's utilitarianism. In 1752, Hume became a librarian at the Faculty of Advocates in Scotland. Though not a university post, this role was a treasure, granting access to vast historical records. He began his monumental 6-volume The History of England, written over 8 years, published from 1754 to 1762. It gained immense popularity, earning Hume the public acclaim his philosophy lacked. Once ignored, he was hailed as England's greatest writer. The history of England offered a balanced, critical perspective on politics and religion, resonating widely. Beyond chronology, Hume explored human nature and societal mechanisms, making it another philosophical masterpiece. Despite his achievements, Hume's personal life was not always smooth. He remained a lifelong bachelor with no romantic relationships. His connections with women were mostly platonic, intellectual friendships. As mentioned, he applied twice for moral philosophy chairs at Edinburgh and Glasgow, but was rejected as an atheist in a conservative society. Yet, he persisted, showcasing his talents diversely. In 1745, he tutored the Marquis of Annandale, engaging with high society. In 1746, as secretary to General Saint Clair, he joined a French expedition, witnessing politics and military life. From 1763, as secretary at the British Embassy in Paris, he mingled with luminaries like Rousseau, D'Alembert, and Diderot. His friendship with Rousseau, initially deep, ended in conflict due to misunderstandings, revealing his human struggles. From 1767 to 1769, he served as Undersecretary of State, a rare philosopher with a successful public career. Interestingly, Hume was not a typical cloistered scholar. He briefly worked as a Bristol banker, amassing wealth and success, a contrast to the pure philosopher image, but showcasing his versatility and practicality. His life was full of unexpected turns, spanning philosophy, history, diplomacy, and finance. Like Newton's apple, Hume drew inspiration from everyday observations, such as billiard balls colliding, sparking his insights on causation, reflecting his value of experience. Hume's philosophy centers on empiricism and skepticism. Alongside Locke and Berkeley, he completed British empiricism, asserting all knowledge derives from sensory experience, limiting human understanding to perception. He skeptically questioned causation, induction, and the self's existence. He saw causation not as necessary, but as a psychological habit from repeated experience. Challenging scientific foundations, he argued induction, predicting the future from past experience, lacks logical justification, famously concluding, "There is no guarantee the future will resemble the past." He denied a fixed soul or self, viewing it as a bundle of changing perceptions. His radical skepticism shook established intellectual foundations, warning against the arrogance of human reason, cementing his significance in Western philosophy. Hume's ethics stem from his skepticism. He argued moral judgments arise not from reason but from universal emotions, particularly sympathy. Moral values are not objective but rooted in emotional responses and social utility. Humans feel pleasure in good deeds, and displeasure in evil due to innate emotions, forming moral norms through social consensus. This laid the groundwork for modern utilitarianism and emotivist ethics, contrasting rationalists like Kant. Hume's religious views were sharp and provocative. He deemed belief in miracles irrational, and argued rational proofs of God's existence were doomed to fail. His dialogues concerning natural religion critiqued attempts to prove God rationally, asserting religious belief stems from fear of death, the unknown, and ignorance, not reason. This shocked Europe, solidifying his atheist label. though he clarified his aim was to warn against religious fanaticism and irrationality, not mere atheism. In his later years, Hume reaped the fruits of his writing, engaging lively with friends and intellectuals. Known for his genial, witty nature, he hosted vibrant debates at his home. His health declined from 1775, and on August 25, 1776. He died in Edinburgh at 65. True to his skepticism, he requested a simple funeral without religious rites, a final testament to his convictions. His death deeply grieved friends like Adam Smith. David Hume, with Locke and Berkeley, completed British empiricism. His sharp skepticism awoke Kant from his dogmatic slumber, influencing Mill, Russell, and modern philosophy across epistemology, metaphysics, ethics, politics, and economics. He critiqued mercantilism, advocated free trade, and pioneered monetary theory, influencing Smith's The Wealth of Nations. Immanuel Kant, the architect of modern philosophy. Let us explore how Kant's philosophy continues to shape our thinking and moral judgments. Tracing its roots through his life, Immanuel Kant was born on April 22, 1724, in Königsberg, a vibrant city in the Kingdom of Prussia, now Kaliningrad, Russia. His father, Johann Georg Kant, was a humble harness maker, and his mother, Anna Regina, was deeply devoted to pietist faith. Kant, the fourth of 9 siblings, grew up in modest circumstances. Perhaps best described as the son of a poor spectacle maker, this environment profoundly shaped his intellectual world. His parents adhered to a strict, disciplined Puritan lifestyle, instilling honesty, diligence, and deep faith in their children. His father taught Kant the integrity and responsibility of a craftsman and citizen. His frail but devout mother was a spiritual anchor, encouraging him to understand the world through reading and observing nature. Kant later recalled her profound influence. These childhood experiences and parental teachings became the foundation for his later emphasis on duty and moral law and ethics. In 1730, at 6, Kant began formal schooling. In 1732, he entered Friedrich's Gymnasium, a private school led by theologian Schultz, a friend of his mother, graduating in 1740. The school, steeped in pietist discipline, focused on Latin, Greek, and classical education. Here, Kant showed early academic talent, and a deep grasp of logic and classical languages, laying the groundwork for his scholarly pursuits. In 1740, he enrolled at the University of Königsberg, studying philosophy, mathematics, and natural sciences. Under the brilliant Professor Martin Knutzen, he delved into logic and mathematics, encountering Newton's physics and Leibniz-Wolff's metaphysics, opening his eyes to Europe's latest academic trends. Newton's influence, in particular, is evident in his early writings. In 1746, at 22, his father's death brought unforeseen hardship, forcing him to pause his studies due to financial strain. To complete his degree, he published thoughts on the true estimation of living forces. But for the next 9 years, he supported himself as a private tutor for noble families near Königsberg. Though a time of struggle, this period allowed him to interact with diverse social classes, gaining deep insights into human nature and society. later enriching his anthropology lectures and writings. Kant's personal life was solitary. He remained a lifelong bachelor with no recorded romantic relationships or close childhood friends. His life was intensely isolated, dedicated entirely to scholarship and reflection. This solitude likely enabled him to focus on his inner world and reason without distraction. His life followed a rigidly disciplined routine, reflecting his obsessive nature. Most famously, his walking compulsion saw him leave home daily at 3:30 p.m. for a precise route, so punctual that Königsberg citizens set their clocks by it. Once, engrossed in Rousseau's Emile or Social Contract, he missed his walk, but never again. This anecdote highlights his strict adherence to duty and routine, mirrored in his rigorous, logical approach to philosophy. Paradoxically, despite his austere life, Kant's lectures were reportedly humorous. Students flocked to hear him, drawn by his wit and vivid analogies that clarified complex concepts. This unexpected humor, a ray of light in his somber life, suggests he was not merely a rigid scholar but a charismatic figure, revealing his human charm. In 1755, Kant's academic merits earned him the role of private docent at the University of Königsberg, after submitting dissertations on fire and new elucidation of the first principles of metaphysical knowledge. As a private docent, similar to a modern adjunct lecturer, he relied on student fees, an unstable position. Yet, he taught a vast array of subjects, including philosophy, natural sciences, geography, theology, and anthropology, with clarity and depth that won widespread acclaim. His anthropology lectures, aimed at the public, showcased his profound understanding of human nature and society. In 1764, he declined a poetry professorship, citing it was outside his expertise, reflecting his unwavering commitment to his academic identity and pursuit of truth over fame or wealth. In 1765, he became assistant librarian at the Royal Library, earning a modest $62 annually, providing financial stability to focus on research. In 1770, at 46, he secured a full professorship in logic and metaphysics at Königsberg, a crowning achievement after years of toil, granting him academic stability and prestige. He later served as university rector in 1786 and 1788, earning the highest academic honors. After 1794, he gradually withdrew from teaching, but his influence only grew. Kant elevated Enlightenment thought to its peak, laying the foundation for German idealism. His philosophy, influencing even 21st-century thought, spans epistemology, ethics, religion, law, and history. His three major critiques, critique of pure reason, critique of practical reason, and critique of judgment, are timeless masterpieces that reshaped Western philosophy. These explore the limits and possibilities of human reason, the principles of moral action, and the basis of aesthetic and teleological judgment. Kant posed three fundamental questions. What can I know? What ought I to do? What may I hope, culminating in, what is man? These questions reflect his effort to balance human reason's limits with its dignity and freedom. Through his critical philosophy, he distinguished the phenomenal world, accessible through senses and reason, from the noumenal world, approachable only through thought. This clarified the domains of natural science and morality, resolving metaphysical confusion. In Critique of Pure Reason, his Copernican revolution redefined human cognition, asserting that our subjective forms and categories actively shape our perception of objects, not vice versa, transcending the empiricism-rationalism divide. In Ethics, he proposed the categorical imperative, act only according to that maxim, whereby you can at the same time will that it should become a universal law, a moral principle inherently good and universally binding. He further urged, act so that you treat humanity, whether in your own person or in that of another, always as an end and never as a means only, emphasizing individual dignity and intrinsic value, a cornerstone of modern human rights. Duty was central to Kant's ethics. He believed only actions driven by respect for the moral law, not consequences or emotions, hold true moral worth. A famous anecdote recounts Kant, during his daily walk, contemplating the starry heavens above me and the moral law within me, a phrase capturing his cosmological and ethical depth. He saw the universe's order and humanity's moral order as interconnected, recognizing reason's limits and infinite possibilities. Kant's influence sharply divides philosophy before and after him. He opened new horizons by defining metaphysics' boundaries, guiding future philosophers. His thought profoundly shaped Fichte, Schelling, and Hegel, who built on and critiqued his ideas. Schelling developed his natural philosophy from Kant's teleological critique, while Hegel sought to overcome Kant's phenomenal-noumenal dichotomy. The saying, "You can philosophize with or against Kant, but not without him," underscores his foundational role in Western philosophy, continually reinterpreted in epistemology, ethics, aesthetics, and political philosophy. On February 12, 1804, Immanuel Kant died in Königsberg at 80. His final words were reportedly "Es ist gut," it is good. Buried at the university's cathedral cemetery, his tombstone bears his beloved phrase, "The starry heavens above me and the moral law within me." Though he lived an isolated, disciplined life, his thought transcends time, profoundly shaping humanity. Friedrich Nietzsche, the philosopher of the abyss. Friedrich Nietzsche, one of humanity's most controversial and captivating philosophers, is renowned for phrases like Gott ist tot, Übermensch, and Ewig Wiederkunft. Born on October 15, 1844, in the small German village of Rocken, he was the son of Karl Ludwig Nietzsche, a Lutheran pastor, and Franziska Nietzsche. At first glance, his childhood seemed serene in a pastoral family. However, it was marked by profound loss. At 5, in 1849, his father died of brain softening, casting a deep shadow over Nietzsche's life, possibly shaping the roots of his philosophical thought. He grew up in a household of women, with his grandmother, mother, and 2 sisters, an environment lacking male authority. This unique setting, filled with feminine care, likely influenced his views on women, family, and authority. His early encounter with death may have fueled recurring themes of life, death, pain, and overcoming in his philosophy. Nietzsche's relationship with his sister, Elisabeth Forster Nietzsche, was complex and tragic, a crucial yet fraught part of his life. Elisabeth deeply admired and loved her brother, but harbored an obsessive need to control him. When Nietzsche's mental collapse left him unable to manage his works, she seized the opportunity. As his sole heir, she gained full control over his writings, editing and publishing them to align with her extreme nationalist and anti-Semitic views. Nietzsche, however, vehemently opposed anti-Semitism, despising racial prejudice and warning against German nationalism's exclusivity. Yet, Elizabeth used his name to support her husband Bernhard Forster's anti-Semitic colonial schemes, and later aligned with the Nazi regime, creating the false impression that Nietzsche's philosophy endorsed Nazism. This was a double tragedy, as his life's work, built to oppose such ideologies, was misused and distorted beyond his knowledge. Had he lived, he likely would have fiercely condemned her actions. His relationship with his mother was also strained, marked by conflicts over her overprotective nature and Christian values, possibly influencing his declaration, "Gott ist tot." For the sensitive Nietzsche, family was both a source of love and refuge and a wellspring of conflict, misunderstanding, and ultimately the tragic distortion of his thought. A pivotal figure in Nietzsche's life was Richard Wagner. To Nietzsche, Wagner was not just a musician but a near-divine mentor and artistic savior. In 1869, at 25, while a professor of classical philology at the University of Basel, he met Wagner, 31 years his senior, and his wife Cosima. Nietzsche was enthralled by Wagner's innovative music and artistic theories, and Wagner saw the young scholar as a spiritual heir. Their bond was initially strong. Nietzsche's early work, Die Geburt der Tragödie aus dem Geist der Musik, bears Wagner's influence, celebrating the balance of Apollonian reason and Dionysian passion in Greek tragedy, praising Wagner's operas as their modern revival. Nietzsche saw in Wagner the rebirth of German culture. However, their relationship ended tragically. Over time, Nietzsche discerned in Wagner's work excessive nationalism, emerging anti-Semitism, and a nihilistic undercurrent masked by grandeur. Wagner's Parsifal, with its Christian redemption narrative and self-pity, clashed with Nietzsche's affirmation of life. Wagner's narcissism, hypocrisy, and manipulative tendencies further disillusioned him. The betrayal of this once revered mentor was profoundly painful. In works like Der Fall Wagner and Nietzsche contra Wagner, he analyzed and critiqued their rift, declaring his philosophical independence. This break was a turning point, leading him to reject external authorities and forge his own path. Among the women in Nietzsche's life, Lou Andreas Salome, a Russian intellectual and writer, was paramount. In 1882, in Rome, Nietzsche, then 38, met the 21-year-old Salome. Captivated by her intellect and independent spirit, he saw her as a philosophical partner and ideal woman, proposing marriage multiple times, only to be firmly rejected by Salome, who shunned the institution of marriage. Their relationship evolved into a complex triangle with Nietzsche's close friend and philosopher Paul Rée. Salome and Rée shared a closer bond, while the trio briefly collaborated intellectually. A famous photograph captures Nietzsche and Rée pulling a cart with Salome holding a whip, symbolizing their dynamic. However, Nietzsche's hopes for a deep connection with her were dashed. Leaving him deeply disappointed, she chose her own path, intensifying his loneliness. This failed romance may have shaped the pessimistic views on women in his later works. Like also Sprach Zarathustra, a lifelong bachelor, Salome was likely the only woman he truly loved. This rejection deepened his solitude, possibly shifting his philosophy toward themes of power and overcoming rather than love, though a yearning for connection persisted within him. Nietzsche's chronic health issues and physical pain were inescapable. He suffered from severe migraines, failing eyesight, digestive problems, and insomnia. These ailments plagued him, profoundly impacting his work. In 1879, at 35, worsening health forced him to resign from his Basel professorship. He spent the next years wandering Europe, seeking relief in the warm, dry climates of Italy, southern France, and Switzerland. Nietzsche claimed his frail health drove him to deeper reflection and writing. Yet, lacking a stable home or family care, he endured this suffering alone. This isolation and pain imbued his philosophy with unique depth, but also sowed the seeds of his downfall. The symbolic collapse of Nietzsche's life occurred on January 3, 1889. In Turin, Italy, witnessing a coachman brutally whip an old, sick horse, Nietzsche, overcome with emotion, rushed to embrace the animal, sobbing and collapsing. He reportedly cried, "Brother," while caressing the horse. This moment marked his mental breakdown, revealing a psyche pushed to its limits. He soon exhibited signs of mental illness, and was admitted to a psychiatric hospital. For nearly a decade, he lived in torment, dying alone in Weimar on August 25, 1900. The cause of his illness remains debated, with contemporary diagnoses of cerebral syphilis contested by modern theories of genetic factors, brain tumors, or drug overuse. What endures is his profound compassion for life and suffering. His tragic end belied the intense message he left about human existence. Nietzsche's life was a tapestry of pain, loss, betrayal, and solitude. Yet, from these struggles, he crafted a philosophy that poses humanity's most profound and provocative questions. His declaration, "Gott ist tot," was not mere atheism but a proclamation of the collapse of Western religious, metaphysical, and moral frameworks. He foresaw the nihilism this loss would bring, urging humanity to overcome it by creating new values. His concept of will zur Macht posited that life's driving force is not survival or pleasure, but an instinct to overcome and expand power, the root of all life and artistic creation. He envisioned the Übermensch, a being unbound by conventional morality, creating new values and affirming life. His ewig Wiederkunft, eternal recurrence, is a pinnacle of his thought, an ethical challenge to affirm every moment of life so fully that one could embrace its eternal repetition. Could we live as we do if life repeated forever? This question demands authenticity in every moment. Nietzsche's philosophy rejects complacency, embracing amor fati, love of fate, to create new values. Perhaps through his tragic life, he sought to deliver humanity's most powerful message. His thought profoundly influenced existentialists like Camus and Sartre, postmodernists like Foucault and Derrida, and fields like psychology, literature, and art, opening new horizons. Friedrich Nietzsche, a true philosopher with a hammer, found light in darkness and meaning in suffering. Arthur Schopenhauer. the philosopher of pessimism. Amid the grand currents of 19th-century German philosophy, Arthur Schopenhauer forged a unique, somber system of thought, the master of pessimistic philosophy. Born on February 22, 1788, in Danzig, a port city of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, now Gdańsk, Poland, Schopenhauer grew up in a wealthy, cultured family. His father, Heinrich Floris Schopenhauer, was a successful merchant and publisher, an intellectual in his own right. His mother, Johanna Schopenhauer, was a progressive novelist, rare for her time, recognized for her literary talent. In this unique blend of art and commerce, Schopenhauer was born the eldest son. His name, Arthur, reflected his father's admiration for English culture and business ties, chosen for its English pronunciation. From childhood, Schopenhauer grew in an extraordinary environment. In 1793, when Danzig was annexed by Prussia, his family moved to Hamburg, a major German commercial hub. This relocation broadened his cultural horizons. He learned French, English, and other languages, traveling across Europe with his father's business, visiting cities like Paris and London, immersing himself in their cultures, arts, and societies. These experiences profoundly shaped his philosophical thought. His father hoped he would inherit the family business. Their European travels were perhaps a final effort to steer him toward commerce. Ironically, these rich experiences awakened his passion for the humanities, particularly philosophy, over business. In 1805, at 17, his father's sudden death, possibly an accident or suicide, marked a turning point, leaving a deep wound. This tragedy likely instilled a vivid sense of life's futility and death's inevitability, a cornerstone of his pessimistic philosophy. His strained relationship with his mother, Johanna, was another tragic, pivotal event. Johanna, sociable and free-spirited, hosted literary salons with prominent writers and intellectuals, contrasting sharply with Schopenhauer's solitary, introspective nature. He scorned her perceived shallow intellect and social demeanor. The phrase, "My mother is different from me," encapsulates their irreconcilable rift, filled with misunderstanding and disconnection. Their severe falling out led to estrangement, and they never met again before her death. Though they exchanged letters, this conflict is widely believed to have fueled his misogynistic views, which permeate his philosophy, disparaging women's emotional and irrational nature. In 1809, he enrolled in the medical faculty at the University of Göttingen, but soon switched to philosophy. His true passion for exploring human existence over biological phenomena. Under Professor Gottlob Ernst Schultz, he was deeply inspired, immersing himself in Plato and Kant. Immanuel Kant's critical philosophy left a lasting impression, which he both adopted and critiqued, summarizing it as "the world is my representation," the starting point of his own thought. Yet, he fiercely criticized contemporary German idealists like Hegel, Fichte, and Schelling, accusing them of corrupting Kant's ideas with pseudo-theories. This sharp critique isolated him from mainstream academia, but solidified his unique philosophical system. He passionately pursued scholarship and writing. In 1816, he engaged deeply with Johann Wolfgang von Goethe on color theory, earning the poet's admiration for his youthful talent. Schopenhauer published on vision and colors, boldly critiquing Newton's and even Goethe's theories, showcasing his critical, independent thinking from an early age. In 1818, his magnum opus, Die Welt als Will und Vorstellung, was completed, presenting a revolutionary philosophy dividing the world into will and Vorstellung. Will, a blind, irrational, insatiable cosmic force, drives all existence, while the world we perceive through our senses and reason is merely its Vorstellung, a shadow of this will. This philosophy clashed with the era's optimistic, reason-centered thought. Yet, the book was largely ignored, with publishers nearly selling its stock at a loss, plunging Schopenhauer into despair, and deepening his distrust of mainstream society and academia. Seeking academic recognition, he applied for a lectureship at the University of Berlin, but sabotaged himself by scheduling his lectures opposite those of the renowned Hegel. Predictably, his classes were nearly empty, forcing him to abandon teaching. This failure further isolated him from the academic establishment, which he scorned for its cliques and intellectual snobbery, leading him to focus solely on independent research and writing. This isolation deepened his thought but intensified his loneliness. He traveled through Italy, experiencing its culture, art, and Mediterranean beauty, documenting his insights, plagued by illnesses and hearing loss. His solitude grew, yet his philosophical reflection never ceased. His pain may have driven him to probe deeper into human existence. In 1821, a scandal tarnished his reputation, when he was charged with assaulting Caroline Louise Marianne Gerber, a seamstress in his lodging. Found guilty, he was ordered to pay her compensation for 20 years, further damaging his reputation and reinforcing his misogynistic views. He belittled women as the short, narrow-shouldered, broad-hipped sex, claiming they exist to absorb men's intellect. These views, woven into his philosophy, later drew significant criticism. His personal relationships were largely solitary. He never married or had children, and his brief romantic encounters often ended in disaster, some sparking infidelity scandals and lawsuits. He struggled to form deep bonds. Remarkably, for a Western philosopher, Schopenhauer was deeply drawn to Eastern thought, particularly Hinduism's Upanishads and Buddhism. He admired their wisdom, finding parallels to his philosophy in concepts like reincarnation, liberation, and transcending suffering. His pessimistic philosophy viewed life as filled with suffering, driven by insatiable desires in an endless cycle of pain. To escape this, he proposed 3 paths: grasping universal ideas through artistic intuition, practicing compassion through ethical living, and negating the blind will through asceticism, akin to Buddhist nirvana, achieving liberation from suffering's cycle. His philosophy long went unnoticed by academia and the public. However, 26 years after its initial publication, a revised edition of Die Welt als Will und Vorstellung in 1844 began to gain attention. In 1851, Parerga und Paralipomena, a collection of his essays and insights, brought him widespread fame across Europe. His candid, profound style resonated, especially with artists and writers, finally earning his philosophy recognition. On September 21, 1860, Arthur Schopenhauer died in Frankfurt. Unmarried and childless, his life appeared lonely and painful. Yet within that solitude, he relentlessly explored human existence and the world's essence. Despite misunderstanding and criticism in his lifetime, his thought profoundly influenced Nietzsche, Wagner, Freud, Wittgenstein, and countless philosophers, artists, and thinkers. Søren Kierkegaard, the wanderer of existential depths. A man who walked the tunnel of deep, dark reflection, Søren Kierkegaard. His life was far from smooth. A poignant record of a man confronting the world in his unique way. Søren Kierkegaard was born on May 5, 1813. In Copenhagen, Denmark, into a wealthy merchant family. As the youngest of 7 siblings, one might assume he grew up with special care. Yet, his family history was complex. His father was 57 and his mother 45 at his birth. His mother, originally a housekeeper in his father's home, bore him amid his father's deep faith and lifelong guilt over their relationship. This past, like a curse, cast a shadow over Kierkegaard's life and thought. His father often spoke of a curse upon their family, leaving an indelible scar on young Kierkegaard. Under this influence, he grew up keenly aware of life's dark facets, guilt, and the inherent tragedy of human existence. This environment profoundly shaped his philosophy. He internalized his father's guilt and despair, wrestling lifelong with the solitude and responsibility of standing before God. The melancholic, tragic tone of his writings stems from these childhood experiences. Most of his siblings predeceased him, 6 out of 7. Death was not a distant future but a constant reality, deeply influencing his thought. His insights into existence's futility and life's transience sprang from these experiences. His brother Peter became a Lutheran bishop, but Kierkegaard rarely mentioned his mother, described only as simple and cheerful. His family history underpins his existential philosophy, emphasizing the individual's solitary quest for meaning before God. At the University of Copenhagen, he studied theology and philosophy. The dominant intellectual current was Hegel's idealism, which sought to explain all phenomena through a rational, systematic absolute spirit. Kierkegaard fiercely opposed this. He believed Hegel's grand system overlooked the concrete struggles of the individual. Human existential angst, despair, and choice could not be captured in a rational framework. He criticized Hegel's philosophy is like a grand palace, but no one can live in it, arguing philosophy must return to the individual's life. He rejected Hegel's focus on universality, neglecting personal subjectivity. A pivotal event was his engagement and breakup with Regine Olsen. In 1840, he became engaged to the vibrant, 17-year-old Regine, 10 years his junior. He loved her deeply but feared his dark, complex inner world would overwhelm her. Obsessed with the idea that his life might ruin hers, he broke the engagement in 1841. Causing himself immense pain, he was consumed by regret and despair, a theme permeating his works, especially Either/Or, which reflects his struggles with love, marriage, and responsibility. He agonized over his fate, perhaps believing his melancholic temperament and guilt precluded ordinary happiness. This breakup deepened his solitude, enriching his philosophy. He deliberately acted monstrously to ensure Regine would move on. intensifying his internal conflicts. Depression shadowed his life. His father's guilt, fear of death, and Regine's loss plunged him into despair. In The Sickness Unto Death, he analyzed despair as a fundamental human condition, a paradoxical gateway to recognizing one's finitude and solitude before God, leading to true faith. He used a unique method, writing under pseudonyms like Victor Eremita, Johannes de Silentio, and Anticlimacus, presenting varied perspectives. This indirect communication freed readers from authorial authority, encouraging independent thought. He aimed not to assert truths but to provoke questioning, emphasizing that truth is subjective, experienced individually. Subjectivity is truth, he declared, prioritizing personal experience over objective knowledge. In 19th-century Denmark, his thought went largely unrecognized. Written in Danish, his works took time to reach broader Europe. Serious discussion began in the 1890s, with his collected works published in 1909. In the 20th century, his ideas gained prominence, influencing existentialists like Nietzsche, Heidegger, and Sartre, and fields like theology, psychology, and literature. His emphasis on freedom, responsibility, and choice resonates today. A core concept is his three stages of existence: aesthetic, ethical, and religious. Not sequential but qualitative shifts in self-realization. The aesthetic stage seeks pleasure, avoiding responsibility, leading to emptiness. The ethical stage embraces social duties, like marriage and work, but cannot resolve existential angst. The religious stage, reached via a leap of faith, transcends reason and ethics, as exemplified by Abraham's sacrifice of Isaac, termed teleological suspension of the ethical. Here, the individual forms a personal relationship with God through faith, beyond rational or moral norms. Kierkegaard saw this leap as a subjective, personal act of responding to God's call. He stressed the single individual, standing alone before God, seeking meaning through choice and responsibility, challenging the era's collectivism. What is the authentic self? He asked, exploring human essence. This solitary life holds infinite possibility and freedom. On November 11, 1855, Søren Kierkegaard died in Copenhagen at 42. His brief life, marked by solitude, despair, and faith, left an indelible mark. In his anguish, he found insights into human existence. As he famously wrote, "Marry, and you will regret it. Do not marry, and you will also regret it." Every choice carried regret, yet it was part of finding existential truth. He reminds us life is a series of choices and responsibilities, where the true self is discovered. Karl Marx, the revolutionary thinker. Today, we explore Karl Marx, known as the father of communism. His hidden story will surprise you. Karl Marx was born on May 5, 1818 in Trier, Germany. His father, a Jew, converted to Lutheranism due to Prussia's discriminatory laws against Jews, enabling him to remain a lawyer. Though raised in a family that shifted from Judaism to Protestantism, Marx grew up in a relatively free, open environment compared to other strict religious households of the era. His father hoped Karl would study law for a stable career. However, young Marx was drawn to philosophy, literature, and history, diving deeply into the humanities. His intellectual curiosity and inquisitive spirit stood out early. At Bonn and Berlin universities, he studied law but became engrossed in Hegel's philosophy, particularly its dialectical method, which he adopted as a foundation for his thought. He joined the Young Hegelians, a group critiquing German society's contradictions, participating in their doctor club to refine his ideas. These intellectual exchanges crucially shaped his later theories. In 1841, Marx earned his doctorate with a dissertation, "The Difference Between the Democritean and Epicurean Philosophy of Nature," analyzing ancient Greek materialism, and laying his early philosophical groundwork. He aspired to be a university professor, but Prussia's conservative regime, and his radical views made this impossible, thwarting his academic dreams. With academia closed, he turned to journalism. In 1842, he began writing for the liberal Rheinische Zeitung in the Rhineland, sharply criticizing Prussia's conservative policies and censorship. His logical, incisive articles gained attention but provoked the government. In 1843, censorship forced the newspaper's closure. Seeking freedom, Marx moved to Paris in 1843, co-editing the revolutionary Deutsche Französische Jahrbucher, and continuing his political and philosophical writing. His radical ideas led to his expulsion from France in 1845. He relocated to Brussels, but the 1848 revolutions resulted in another expulsion. After being banished from Prussia, France, and Belgium, Marx settled in London in 1849, living there in exile until his death in 1883. He endured severe poverty, sometimes using false names to evade creditors. His exile a relentless struggle to uphold his beliefs amid ideological and financial hardship. Marx's lifelong ally was Friedrich Engels, a partnership considered one of history's greatest intellectual collaborations. Reuniting in Paris in 1844, they became ideological comrades. Engels, born to a wealthy German textile manufacturer, supported Marx's genius through generous financial aid. Records show Engels sent Marx $36,000 from 1865 to 1869, a fortune that allowed Marx to focus on research. Their collaboration produced foundational Marxist works like the German Ideology and the Communist Manifesto, profoundly influencing global socialist movements. After Marx's death, Engels edited and published Das Kapital's second and third volumes, completing his legacy. Without Engels, Marxism as we know it might not exist. What of Marx's personal life? He married Jenny von Westphalen, a Prussian aristocrat's daughter, defying class differences and family opposition. Their deep, devoted love endured extreme poverty. They had 7 children, 4 of whom died young from malnutrition and disease, causing immense grief. Supporting his family in poverty was a mental and physical toll. Jenny pawned Marx's last pair of trousers for food. Rumors persisted of an illegitimate son, Frederick Demuth, with their housekeeper Helen Demuth. Marx denied it, but Engels claimed paternity, fueling speculation. DNA tests later confirmed Marx as the father. These tragedies and complexities reveal a man far from the Stoic revolutionary, grappling with human struggles. Unlike the bearded revolutionary image, young Marx was romantic and literary. dreaming of being a poet and writing poems and plays. Though not critically acclaimed, his early immersion in Romanticism, particularly Goethe and Schiller, shaped his expressive style, evident in the metaphors of his later works. In exile, his scholarly zeal never waned. The British Museum Library was his forum. Like ancient Rome's, where he devoured texts, analyzing capitalism's mechanics and contradictions for Das Kapital, studying Industrial Revolution records, classical economists, and workers' plight, he refined his theories. In 1867, Das Kapital, Volume 1, was published. A monumental critique of capitalism's production relations, labor exploitation, and surplus value. Marx only completed the first volume, with Engels later compiling volumes 2, 1885, and 3, 1894, from his manuscripts. A testament to their partnership. In 1864, Marx co-founded the International Workingmen's Association, the first international, serving as its German secretary, urging global workers to unite against capitalists. He tirelessly advocated proletarian revolution to abolish capitalism, private property, and establish a classless communist society. His ideas fueled labor and socialist movements across Europe. Marxism transcends one man's thought, encompassing social, economic, and political theory. Marx saw history as driven by class struggle, particularly between the bourgeoisie and proletariat in capitalism, defined by who controls production. His dialectical materialism fused Hegel's dialectics with Feuerbach's materialism, viewing the world as matter in constant motion and change, driven by internal contradictions. Historical materialism holds that economic structures, the base, determine politics, law, religion, art, and philosophy, the superstructure. History progresses through contradictions between productive forces and relations, via class struggle, from primitive communism to slave societies, feudalism, capitalism, and ultimately communism. Communism, Marx's ideal, abolishes classes and private property, with collective ownership of production means. He predicted capitalism's internal contradictions would lead to its collapse, followed by proletarian dictatorship and communism. His economics, rooted in the labor theory of value, posits that a commodity's value derives from socially necessary labor time. His surplus value theory argues that capitalists' profits come from exploiting labor's excess value, revealing capitalism's core contradiction. Marxism profoundly shaped the 20th century, spurring the Russian, Chinese, and Cuban revolutions, and socialist states like the Soviet Union. Though they diverged from his vision, his ideas fueled labor, social, and human rights movements, influencing sociology, economics, and philosophy. Anecdotes reveal Marx's human side. At Bonn, his hot temper led to a duel after drunken brawls. He lived stateless, exiled, and impoverished, with Jenny pawning clothes for food. He reportedly said, "I am not a Marxist." Wary of his ideas being dogmatically distorted, he sought critical reflection, not blind application. These stories show a complex man, wrestling with conviction and hardship. John Stuart Mill, the champion of liberty and utility. A towering figure in 19th-century British thought, celebrated as a master of liberalism and utilitarianism. John Stuart Mill. Through his life, we witness how intellect, emotion, love, and loss can transform into profound ideas. John Stuart Mill was born in 1806 in London. His childhood was an extreme case of prodigious education, both remarkable and rigorous. His father, James Mill, a distinguished philosopher, historian, and radical reformer, was determined to mold his son into a supreme intellect. He implemented an unimaginably intense educational regimen, a pioneer in educational experiments. At 3, Mill began learning Greek, engaging in complex philosophical debates during morning walks with his father. By 8, he mastered Latin, algebra, Plato's dialogues, and Herodotus's histories, reading original texts and debating them. He experienced a condensed version of the education of ancient Greco-Roman scholars. By 12, he surpassed most university students, displaying deep insight in logic, economics, and history. While most 12-year-olds play and develop socially, Mill was immersed in classics and philosophy, building a tower of knowledge. His intellect was vast, but his emotional side was neglected. His father viewed emotions as irrational obstacles to rational judgment. Emotions were suppressed, and only logical thinking was demanded. Mill's natural childhood innocence and playfulness were likely stifled, leading to a lack of empathy and difficulty recognizing or handling his own emotions. He became a perfectly functioning intellectual machine, devoid of human warmth or deep sensibility. This rigorous education brought immense intellectual growth, but caused emotional barrenness. His father's focus on reason and knowledge ignored emotional richness and artistic fulfillment. Mill was not allowed to express emotions, forced to suppress them for logic. This led to a profound crisis at 20, when he suddenly lost interest and motivation, plunging into deep depression. The grand goals of reform and social progress, instilled by his father, felt hollow. Even if achieved, they would not bring happiness. He called this a crisis in my mental history, a crisis of soul. He even contemplated suicide, revealing the depth of his pain and inner conflict. Years of intellectual achievement felt meaningless, consumed by nihilism. His autobiography vividly records this agony, often attributed to his father's excessive education. He felt like a dry, robotic intellect, unable to feel sensory pleasure or aesthetic joy, frustrated by his emotional void. This crisis symbolizes the limits of 19th-century Enlightenment rationalism. Art saved him. He chanced upon William Wordsworth's poetry, which delicately portrayed nature's beauty and human emotions, stirring his barren sensibility. Moved by its depth, he began recovering his emotions. Through poetry, he reconnected with nature, human feelings, and life's facets, feeling vitality return and shedding tears. He realized he was alive. This taught him that emotional richness and artistic inspiration are as vital as rational thought. A life of mere knowledge was incomplete. Balance with emotion and art was essential. This experience shaped his philosophy, influencing his refinement of utilitarianism. He emphasized that happiness stems not just from quantitative pleasure, but from higher moral and intellectual satisfaction. Wordsworth's poetry was a turning point, offering healing and philosophical insight. In 1830, at 24, Mill met Harriet Taylor, transforming his life. Married to John Taylor and mother of 3. Harriet captivated Mill with her intellect, insight, and strength. A rare advocate for women's rights, she profoundly influenced his thought. They felt an immediate intellectual bond, becoming each other's chief supporter. Mill claimed their relationship was pure friendship, but others saw it as scandalous. His father and friends disapproved, urging him to end it. Undeterred, Mill called Harriet his eternal friend and advisor, crediting her for his philosophical completion. She enriched his work with sharp commentary, refining his style and arguments. His seminal work, The Subjection of Women, a classic of feminism, was inspired by her ideas. Mill argued women deserve equal rights and education, challenging societal sexism as mere prejudice, suppressed by social constraints. Harriet shaped his intellectual and political thought, as well as his emotional stability. After Harriet separated from her husband, Mill visited her weekends, defying societal judgment. In 1849, after John Taylor's death, they married in 1851. Mill described these 7.5 years as very happy. Though short, Harriet was his intellectual partner, spiritual anchor, and eternal muse. Her influence led him to advocate for women's suffrage. Elected to Parliament in 1865, he proposed women's voting rights, a radical move met with fierce opposition. He argued improving women's status benefits society. His efforts significantly impacted later suffrage movements, cementing his role as a feminist pioneer. He was a practical intellectual, translating philosophy into political action. Happiness was fleeting. In 1858, Harriet died of tuberculosis during a French trip, devastating Mill. Losing his lifelong partner plunged him into grief. He buried her in Avignon, bought a house there, and spent his remaining years. Her absence brought profound loss. He visited her grave daily, conversing with her memory. Avignon became a sacred place of their bond. Mill died in 1873 in Avignon, buried beside Harriet. Their shared resting place noted on his tombstone. This is Mill's hidden story of love and loss. After Harriet's death, he lived with her daughter, Helen Taylor, who helped organize and publish his works. An active feminist, Helen aided his final philosophical efforts. Harriet was central to his life, enriching his philosophy with human experience, love, and loss. His experiences taught him happiness cannot be directly pursued. Chasing it drives it away, a paradoxical truth. Pursuing others' happiness or societal good brings happiness indirectly. This shaped his utilitarianism, advocating the greatest happiness of the greatest number. Unlike Bentham's quantitative utilitarianism, Mill's qualitative utilitarianism valued mental over physical pleasures, reflecting his crisis and poetic awakening. His ideas influence modern politics, economics, and society. Policymakers consider maximum societal happiness, echoing Mill. His liberalism, especially the harm principle, ensures individual freedom unless it harms others, underpinning free speech and thought. He stressed protecting minority opinions and valuing diversity. Revolutionary for Victorian England, and still debated globally. Bertrand Russell, the giant of 20th-century thought. Bertrand Russell, a titan who shook the 20th century with philosophy, logic, mathematics, and social criticism. Born on May 18, 1872, in Trellick, Monmouthshire, England, he became an orphan, losing his mother at 2 and his father at 4. His parents, radical liberals, especially his atheist and progressive father, left a will entrusting Russell to free-thinking guardians. The court rejected this, placing him with his conservative grandparents, raised by his strict grandmother, Countess Frances Russell, a devout Puritan. He grew up in a rigid Victorian environment. This shaped young Russell, isolated from the world, with only his tutor as a friend. This lonely childhood fostered deep introspection, leading him to immerse himself in mathematics and philosophy, probing the nature of existence. This backdrop helped him develop a critical view of authority and conventions, fostering independent thought. His family, a distinguished aristocratic lineage, wielded centuries of influence in British politics and society. His grandfather, Lord John Russell, served twice as Prime Minister under Queen Victoria. This heritage granted Russell elite education. In 1890, he entered Trinity College, Cambridge, engaging with top scholars like G. E. Moore and Alfred North Whitehead. Blossoming intellectually, joining the secretive Apostles' Society, he expanded his thinking through intense debates. Initially drawn to Hegelianism, he shifted to analytic and empiricist philosophy. A key figure in his journey was Ludwig Wittgenstein. Recognizing Wittgenstein's genius, Russell became his mentor and friend. An anecdote recounts Wittgenstein interrupting Russell's lecture with a note, "Professor, please listen to me. I think the same as you on logic." Russell valued Wittgenstein's logical talent, seeing him as a successor. Their bond profoundly influenced each other, with Wittgenstein's early philosophy building on Russell's foundations. Though their views later diverged, their exchange shaped 20th-century analytic philosophy. One of the most significant mentor-student relationships in modern philosophy, Russell is a founder of analytic philosophy. With Whitehead, he co-authored Principia Mathematica, a monumental work aiming to derive all mathematics from basic logical concepts. Spanning 3 volumes and over 3,600 pages, it is a landmark in human intellect, reconstructing mathematics logically. Its type theory offered an innovative solution to avoid paradoxes, influencing modern logic and computer science. Russell's theory of descriptions clarified the logical role of names and descriptions, distinguishing grammatical from logical forms, establishing analytic philosophy's methodology. His goal was to resolve philosophical problems through logical analysis, introducing scientific methods to philosophy, shaping 20th-century Western philosophy. His life was not solely academic. Russell lived tumultuously, with 4 marriages and numerous affairs. His first wife, Alice Pearsall Smith, a Quaker, married him in 1894 but divorced in 1921. Alice, from a prominent American Quaker family, was his intellectual partner, but Russell grew bored, leading to their separation. In 1921, he married Dora Black, a passionate socialist feminist, with whom he had 2 children. But their mutual infidelity ended the marriage in 1935. His third wife, Patricia Peter Spence, Married in 1936 and divorced in 1952. Bore him a son. Spence, much younger, was his student. In 1952, he married Edith Finch, his childhood friend's sister, who provided stability until his death. Russell also had deep relationships with figures like Lady Atoline Morell, Evelyn Whitehead, and Vivian Eliot, T.S. Eliot's wife. His affair with Morell, a muse to artists and intellectuals, is notable. His love life, defying societal norms, showed him challenging conventions in all aspects. Not just as a scholar. He pursued love and freedom unbound by social constraints. Russell was a renowned pacifist. During World War I, he fiercely opposed the war, leading to 6 months in prison and the loss of his Trinity College lectureship. He foresaw war's tragedy, condemning its irrationality and inhumanity, facing heavy criticism but standing firm. During World War II, his pacifism shifted. He controversially supported preemptive Western strikes to prevent Soviet nuclear armament, reflecting his pragmatic concern for humanity's survival over absolute pacifism. In the Cold War, he led anti-nuclear campaigns, co-founding the Pugwash conferences and issuing the Russell-Einstein Manifesto, becoming a symbol of global nuclear disarmament. His debates were numerous, notably with Karl Popper, in a 1946 Aristotelian Society debate. Language and Fact. Popper reportedly brandished a poker to challenge Russell's views. Popper critiqued Russell's empiricist epistemology and verification principle, emphasizing falsifiability in scientific growth. Their clash, highlighting deep methodological differences, is a landmark in 20th-century philosophy. Russell visited Soviet Russia in 1920, meeting Lenin, whom he described as having the cruelty of a mischievous boy, expressing skepticism about socialist revolution. Unlike many Western intellectuals, he analyzed the Bolshevik Revolution critically. Wary of utopian illusions, he also met Mao Zedong in China, but maintained a critical stance on communism, advocating Western democracy and individual freedom. Russell's fame stemmed from his brilliant intellect and piercing insight into the era's spirit. He pioneered analytic philosophy, dedicating his life to peace and a rational society. His life transcended scholarship, a relentless quest of questioning and resisting in the turbulent 20th century. He won the Nobel Prize in Literature for championing humanitarian ideals and freedom of thought in diverse works. His writing, accessible to the public, offered deep insights into philosophy and social issues. A History of Western Philosophy, a classic, showcases his vast knowledge and clear exposition. Beloved by readers, as he said, "Love is what will save us, and intelligence will save the world." Bertrand Russell's life was a noble journey pursuing these values. Ludwig Wittgenstein, the revolutionary philosopher. One of the most unique and influential figures in 20th-century philosophy, Ludwig Joseph Johann Wittgenstein was born on April 26, 1889. In Vienna, the prosperous capital of Austria. His family was among the wealthiest and most influential Jewish dynasties in Europe. His father, Karl Wittgenstein, a titan who virtually monopolized the Austro-Hungarian steel industry, was one of the era's richest men. His mother, Leopoldine Calmus Wittgenstein, was a woman of remarkable musical talent. This background allowed the Wittgenstein siblings to grow up in a rich, stimulating environment with top-tier artistic and academic education. Their home was a salon for the era's greatest artists and intellectuals, where luminaries like Brahms and Mahler performed. The Wittgenstein family's love for music was profound, with his brother Paul becoming a renowned pianist, famous for playing with his left hand, after losing his right arm in World War I. Yet, a dark, tragic shadow hung over this prosperous family. 3 of Wittgenstein's brothers took their own lives. His eldest brother, Hans, a musical genius, succumbed to the pressure of his talent and died by suicide in 1902. His second brother, Rudolf, an aspiring actor, faced family opposition and societal prejudice, ending his life in Berlin in 1904. His third brother, Kurt, died by suicide on the battlefield at the end of World War I in 1918. These successive tragedies likely left deep scars on young Ludwig. He reportedly struggled with profound loneliness, depression, and anxiety throughout his life. In this outwardly affluent but inwardly tragic environment, he developed a unique, profound worldview. He constantly questioned life's finitude and the meaning of human existence, embarking on a path of philosophical inquiry. From a young age, Wittgenstein displayed exceptional insight and intellectual curiosity. Despite his musical talent, he was drawn to practical engineering. From 1906 to 1908, he studied mechanical engineering at Berlin Technical University. He then moved to England, researching aeronautics at Manchester University from 1908 to 1911. He patented an innovative airplane propeller design and explored early jet engine concepts. Had he not become a philosopher, he might have been a groundbreaking engineer or inventor. His true calling, however, was philosophy, pondering the foundations of mathematics. He sought out Gottlob Frege, a leading mathematician and philosopher. Frege recommended Bertrand Russell's works, and after reading Principia Mathematica and the Problems of Philosophy, Wittgenstein was captivated. In 1911, he went to Trinity College, Cambridge, where Russell taught, studying philosophy under his direct guidance. Russell recognized Wittgenstein's extraordinary genius, viewing him as a philosophical heir. Russell believed Wittgenstein's insights would advance his logical atomism. Their intellectual exchange was pivotal in shaping Wittgenstein's early philosophy, with Russell calling him the most perfect genius I ever met. Wittgenstein's personal life was as complex and controversial as his philosophy. He remained a lifelong bachelor, with persistent rumors about his sexual orientation, speculation about romantic relationships with men, supported by his diaries, letters, and contemporaries' accounts, abounded. His bond with Cambridge peer David Pinsent, for instance, suggested a deep connection beyond friendship, and Pinsent's death profoundly affected him. Posthumously published diaries hint at homosexual inclinations, fueling ongoing debate. While his private life is not directly tied to his philosophy, it offers clues to his lonely, often painful existence, reflecting the tension between societal norms and inner desires. His philosophical inquiries were not mere intellectual exercises, but products of existential anguish. In 1914, as World War I engulfed Europe, Wittgenstein made a shocking decision. He volunteered for the Austro-Hungarian army. Despite his wealth and academic prestige, which could have exempted him, he chose the battlefield, initially serving on a ship. He later transferred to an artillery unit on the Italian front. Displaying immense courage, he earned several decorations, including the Silver Medal for Valor. His war diaries vividly record his fear of death, reflections on life's meaning, and struggles with his relationship to God. Witnessing the boundary between life and death, he grappled with the limits of language and human existence. The war's horrors profoundly shaped him, forming the backdrop for his early masterpiece, Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus. He drafted this in bunkers and trenches, exploring the relationship between language, the world, and logic. The war deepened his reflections on language's limits, communication's complexity, and existential meaning, profoundly influencing his philosophy. After the war, Wittgenstein made another astonishing choice. Believing Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus had resolved all philosophical problems, he became an elementary school teacher in the remote Austrian villages of Trattenbach and Puchberg am Schneeberg. For a leading intellectual from one of Europe's richest families to teach rural children was unthinkable. From 1920 to 1926, he taught for 6 years. Passionate but strict and dogmatic, he clashed with conservative educational norms and parents, even physically disciplining students, leading to a lawsuit. In 1926, he abandoned teaching. Beyond teaching, from 1926 to 1928, he designed and oversaw the construction of a mansion for his sister Marguerite Stonborough in Vienna's Kundmangasse. The Wittgenstein House, a minimalist masterpiece, reflects his aesthetic sensibility and philosophical pursuit of clarity and structural perfection, emphasizing pure form and proportion. After teaching, he engaged with intellectuals like Frank Ramsey and Piero Sraffa. Sraffa's debates were pivotal, challenging Wittgenstein's early ideas in Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus. Sraffa questioned the idealized logical structure of language, emphasizing its dependence on social context and cultural conventions. For example, he asked, if pointing is rude in a culture, how do you explain the meaning of this? This prompted Wittgenstein's philosophical shift, leading to his later masterpiece, Philosophical Investigations. A famous anecdote involves his clash with Karl Popper. On October 25, 1946, at Cambridge's Moral Science Club, where Wittgenstein was chairman, Popper lectured on the reality of philosophical problems, arguing that philosophical issues are not merely linguistic confusions. Wittgenstein, brandishing a fireplace poker, challenged Popper to produce a single sentence that doesn't break rules. The heated exchange, with Wittgenstein allegedly threatening Popper with the poker before storming out, is legendary. It reflects not just personal tension, but a deeper debate on the role of linguistic analysis in philosophy, a defining moment in analytic philosophy. Wittgenstein's lasting impact stems from his profound language philosophy, divided into early and later phases. His early philosophy, encapsulated in Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus, published in 1921, is concise, and structured around 7 core propositions. With extensive commentary, it posits that language mirrors the world like a picture, analyzing the logical structure between them. Wittgenstein classified propositions as true, false, or meaningless, arguing many philosophical problems arise from language misuse or logical misunderstandings. He sought to set language's limits, claiming metaphysical topics like ethics, aesthetics, and religion are beyond full expression, concluding, "Whereof one cannot speak, thereof one must be silent." This work shocked and inspired analytic philosophers, significantly influencing logical positivism. Later, through reflection and Sraffa's critique, he recognized Tractatus's limitations, undergoing a philosophical turn. His later work, Philosophical Investigations, published posthumously in 1953, abandoned idealized linguistic structures for the concept of language game, emphasizing that meaning depends on social context, cultural conventions, and rules. He rejected fixed meanings, focusing on language's fluidity and diversity. Examining the word game, he argued against seeking essential traits, instead highlighting family resemblance, where concepts are linked by overlapping similarities, like family members. This revolutionized 20th-century philosophy, particularly analytic and ordinary language philosophy, influencing the Oxford School. Wittgenstein, a revolutionary thinker, reshaped our understanding of language, thought, and the world, with his works continually studied across humanities, social sciences, and arts. Jean-Paul Sartre, the face of existentialism, a towering figure in 20th-century French thought, the epitome of existentialism, always at the heart of controversy. Jean-Paul Sartre was born on June 21, 1905. In Paris, his father, Jean-Baptiste Sartre, was a French naval officer, and his mother was Anne-Marie Sartre. When Sartre was just 2, his father died of a tropical disease. This tragedy profoundly shaped young Sartre's life. From then on, he lived with his mother, at his maternal grandfather's home. This grandfather is key to understanding Sartre. Charles Schweitzer, an Alsatian German professor, exerted an immense intellectual influence on Sartre from childhood. He instilled in Sartre a deep interest in Latin, classical literature, and philosophy. Young Sartre devoured countless books in his grandfather's treasure-like library, quenching his intellectual thirst. Thanks to his grandfather's direct teaching, Sartre absorbed knowledge far faster and deeper than a standard education allowed. Fluent in French, Latin, and German, he mastered a vast intellectual heritage, from ancient Greek philosophers to modern European thinkers. In his autobiographical work, Les Mots, Sartre vividly recalls this period, noting how his grandfather's influence awakened him to literature and built his imaginative world. This childhood reading and rigorous yet warm intellectual training laid the foundation for Sartre's growth as a great thinker and writer. During this time, he began reflecting deeply on the meaning of his existence and life's absurdity, forming the roots of his existentialist philosophy. His childhood was not solely filled with intellectual exploration and quiet reading. In 1917, 10 years after her husband's death, Sartre's mother remarried Joseph Mancy, This remarriage significantly affected Sartre psychologically. He struggled with sharing his mother and adjusting to new family dynamics. Moving from his grandfather's home to his stepfather's was a major change and source of confusion, though Sartre rarely spoke directly of this period. Scholars suggest the alienation, complex emotions about relationships, and intense longing for freedom in his later works stem from these family changes. His grandfather's intellectual support and his mother's remarriage provide crucial context for understanding Sartre and the personal origins of his existentialist thought. Now, let's turn to Sartre's personal relationships. The indispensable name is Simone de Beauvoir. They met in 1929 at the École Normale Supérieure in Paris, becoming lifelong intellectual partners and lovers. Their meeting is considered a historic event in 20th-century French intellectual history. Sartre and de Beauvoir perfectly understood and respected each other's intellect and insight. Their relationship, however, differed from traditional romantic or marital norms. It was the famous open relationship. They allowed each other complete physical and mental freedom while maintaining deep intellectual and emotional bonds. Despite other lovers, they remained each other's primary intellectual influence. De Beauvoir challenged Sartre's philosophical ideas with rigorous critique and passionate debate, refining his thought, while Sartre inspired her writing and feminist philosophy. They recognized each other as the most important presence in their lives, with Sartre calling their bond amour nécessaire, essential love. Though they never had a formal marriage, their relationship was stronger and deeper than any conventional union. De Beauvoir's La Deuxième Sexe laid the foundation for modern feminist philosophy, and together they became central figures in the French existentialist movement. Their relationship upended conservative societal norms, demonstrating a new model of love where free, independent individuals enrich each other through mutual respect and intellectual exchange. Sartre's romantic life wasn't limited to de Beauvoir. He had relationships with many women, including amours contingentes, contingent loves, acknowledged by de Beauvoir. Biographers note that Sartre drew inspiration from these women and influenced them in turn. While part of his open relationship philosophy, these connections were complex and controversial to some. Yet, Sartre always placed his relationship with de Beauvoir at the center of his life. She was not just a lover, but a spiritual anchor and equal intellectual partner. Their relationship, evolving through mutual influence while respecting each other's freedom, offered a uniquely modern model of love. Now, let's move to the darkest and most controversial point in Sartre's life: the Nazi collaboration debate. During World War II, when France was occupied by Nazi Germany, Sartre's actions sparked prolonged criticism and debate. In June 1940, he was captured by German forces and held in a prisoner of war camp for 9 months. Released in March 1941 for health reasons. Returning to Paris, he taught at Lycée Condorcet and Lycée Pasteur while continuing his playwriting. The controversy lies in his ability to work relatively freely under Nazi occupation, and his works passing strict censorship. Critics argue that Sartre acquiesced to the occupiers, implying tacit collaboration. His play Les Mouches, performed in 1943, at Paris's Théâtre de la Cité, past Nazi censorship, raising suspicions, based on the Orestes myth. It carried existentialist themes of free will, responsibility, and resistance to absurd realities. But Nazi censors, likely seeing it as a mere classical adaptation, approved it. However, this controversy has another perspective and complex context. After his release, Sartre joined Socialisme et Liberté, a resistance group, though less prominent than other groups. He contributed by producing and distributing underground pamphlets. His existentialist philosophy, emphasizing ultimate freedom, personal choice, and responsibility in absurd realities, served as an indirect critique of totalitarian ideologies like Nazism. His ideas inspired a resistant spirit in French people feeling despair and powerlessness, awakening their sense of existential freedom and responsibility. The debate over his wartime stance remains unresolved, reflecting the complex process of reckoning with France's painful past. It highlights how individual choices and responsibilities are judged in extreme circumstances, requiring consideration of the era's context and Sartre's philosophical framework rather than hasty judgment. After the war, Sartre emerged as a giant in French intellectual circles, engaging actively in political and social causes. He supported communism and the socialist camp during the Cold War, despite international awareness of Soviet human rights abuses like the Gulag. He initially refrained from criticizing the USSR. He believed communism was essential to counter Western capitalism and suppress reactionary forces. During the Korean War, he even supported claims of Western provocation. These radical stances drew heavy criticism in the West, amplifying doubts about his morality and political judgment, especially alongside the Nazi collaboration controversy. Many accused him of ignoring dictatorial regimes' abuses. Yet Sartre remained steadfast. He supported Third World liberation and anti-colonial movements, fiercely criticizing French colonial policies during the Algerian War and opposing the Vietnam War. His actions inspired many youths, but drew criticism for supporting regimes with dark sides. Only in his later years did he critique Soviet human rights issues, though his political stances remained controversial. His complex political engagement reveals his deep involvement in real-world politics and the ethical dilemmas he faced. Sartre's life is filled with surprising anecdotes. One is his LSD experiment. Prescribed by a psychoanalyst, he took LSD, experiencing vivid hallucinations, including being chased by a lobster. This was part of the era's psychoanalytic trends, and some scholars suggest it influenced the existential absurdity and anxiety in his novel La Nausée. Another famous anecdote is his Nobel Prize refusal. In 1964, the Swedish Academy named him the Nobel laureate in literature, but he firmly declined. This shocked the world. His refusal wasn't arrogance, but a rejection of institutional honors. He believed writers must remain unbound by external authority to maintain free thought and criticism. He feared the Nobel's prestige would turn him into an institutionalized figure, limiting his freedom. This decision made global headlines, cementing his image as an independent intellectual. and raising questions about true intellectual freedom. Sartre is inseparable from existentialism. His philosophy is encapsulated in l'existence précède l'essence. Existence precedes essence. Humans are not born with a fixed essence or purpose, first existing, then creating their essence through choices and actions. We are not bound by predetermined fate or divine plans, but are free beings responsible for our lives. This resonated with those lost in the tragedy of World War II, offering hope that despite absurdity, we can redefine our lives through freedom. Yet, this freedom comes with the heavy burden of responsibility. As Sartre famously said, "L'homme est condamné à être libre." Man is condemned to be free. We are so free we cannot escape freedom, bearing responsibility for every choice. This philosophy profoundly influenced Western society, especially the youth, inspiring them to find meaning, resist absurdity, and pursue new values. Sartre's existentialism was not mere academic play, but a desperate effort to confront societal chaos and existential anxiety. Albert Camus, the voice of the absurd, a writer and philosopher who inspired countless people. Albert Camus. Let's explore how he became a thinker representing modern anxieties. Albert Camus was born on November 7, 1913, in Mondovi, a small rural village in French colonial Algeria. Just 1 year later, in 1914, his father died in the tragic Battle of the Marne. During World War I, fighting for his country, his mother, of Spanish descent, was illiterate and suffered from hearing impairment. They endured extreme poverty, scraping by day to day, and Camus grew up in an Algerian slum. Like Meursault, the protagonist of his masterpiece L'Étranger, he faced life's absurdity in this harsh environment. Yet, he possessed extraordinary talent, a brilliant intellect, an indomitable will to overcome adversity, and an unyielding passion for learning. In primary school, a devoted teacher recognized his potential and provided unwavering support, both materially and emotionally, enabling him to continue his education. This teacher was a pillar, ensuring poverty didn't crush Camus' wings. This experience later led him to emphasize education's importance and feel deep compassion for the disadvantaged. Camus later entered the University of Algiers, majoring in philosophy. The discipline opened an intellectual journey into the fundamental questions of existence and the world. However, during university, he contracted tuberculosis, a deadly disease, forcing him to halt his studies. At the time, tuberculosis was highly dangerous, and his health deteriorated rapidly. Despite this, he never abandoned his passion for learning. To support himself and cover medical costs, he worked as a tutor, car mechanic, and even a weather bureau intern. During this period, he met philosopher Jean Grenier, who became a lifelong mentor. Grenier recognized Camus' exceptional talent and philosophical insight, offering constant encouragement and profoundly shaping his thought. Their relationship was a cornerstone in Camus' philosophical and literary journey. Camus gained global recognition in 1942 with the publication of his novel L'Étranger. The work caused an unprecedented stir, elevating him to one of the era's most prominent writers. L'Étranger captured the pervasive nihilism and existential anxiety in European society. Resonating deeply with readers. Through Mersault's detached, dry perspective, it brilliantly depicted human alienation and life's meaninglessness. He followed with masterpieces like La Peste, the philosophical essay Le Mythe de Sisyphe, L'Homme Révolté, and the novel La Chute, leaving an indelible mark on 20th-century literature. His works went beyond storytelling, posing profound questions about life, death, freedom, responsibility, absurdity, and rebellion, demanding deep reflection from readers. The core theme of his work is absurdity. Camus believed absurdity arises because humans seek meaning, but the world offers no answers, creating a fundamental contradiction. In Le Mythe de Sisyphe, he uses the myth of Sisyphus to illustrate this human condition, endlessly pushing a boulder up a mountain, only for it to roll down. Sisyphus embraces his fate and resolves to push again, becoming a hero of rebellion against absurdity. Camus proposed 3 responses to absurdity: suicide to escape it, seeking transcendental meaning through religion, or metaphysics, and rebellion. He rejected suicide and religious escapism, emphasizing bold rebellion against absurd reality, advocating for the continuous search for meaning without succumbing to fate. His philosophy resonated with youths lost in the chaos of war, offering hope amidst despair. His literature was not mere stories, but vessels for philosophical thought. He expressed complex concepts in accessible language, making his works timeless. During the tragedy of World War II, Camus was more than a writer. He actively participated in the French Resistance, serving as editor of the underground newspaper Combat. Amid war's horrors, he wrote and printed secretly, risking his life to spread messages of freedom and justice, inspiring hope in occupied France. His actions exemplified a socially responsible intellectual, contributing significantly to France's liberation. Camus was deeply engaged in social causes. He briefly joined the French Communist Party, participating in leftist movements. He consistently opposed Algeria's colonial oppression, understanding its injustice from his upbringing. However, he rejected blind allegiance to any ideology or totalitarianism, dedicating his life to defending individual freedom, dignity, and values. His stance was evident in the Algerian War, where he criticized violence from both the French and the Algerian National Liberation Front, advocating for peace and reconciliation. This earned criticism from both sides, but his consistent pacifism continues to resonate. Despite childhood poverty, tuberculosis, and war's tragedy, Camus relentlessly thought and created. His literature was not mere fiction, but a living reflection of his intense struggles and philosophical insights, portraying humans rebelling to preserve dignity amidst absurdity. His relationship with Jean-Paul Sartre, another giant of 20th-century French philosophy, is a crucial part of his life. Initially, they admired each other's talents, sharing intellectual friendship over late-night café debates, leading the French intellectual scene. Over time, ideological differences, particularly regarding Stalinism and communism, caused a rift. Sartre was relatively sympathetic to the Soviet regime, while Camus fiercely criticized Stalinism's violence and inhumanity. In L'Homme Révolté, Camus sharply critiqued totalitarian violence, leading to a public dispute, and their eventual split. This debate shook the European intellectual world, marking a key moment in 20th-century Western thought. Camus' personal life was colorful. He married twice, but maintained multiple romantic relationships, living freely outside societal norms. Reflecting his artistic spirit, he was also a passionate football fan, having played as a goalkeeper in an Algerian amateur team. He famously said, "All that I know most surely about morality and the obligations of man, I owe to football," crediting the sport with teaching him teamwork, fair play, and accepting defeat. Unlike Meursault's detached demeanor, Camus was vibrant and energetic, using Meursault to critique society, not reflect his personality. In 1957, at the young age of 43, Camus received the Nobel Prize in Literature, the second youngest recipient ever. The Swedish Academy praised his work for illuminating the problems of the human conscience with lucid seriousness. From an Algerian slum to global literary acclaim, his journey was a dramatic success story, inspiring many. The Nobel Prize solidified his global stature, spreading his ideas widely. Tragically, his brilliant life ended abruptly on January 4, 1960, in a car accident near Le Petit Villebleven, southeast of Paris. Like the absurdity he described, his sudden death shocked and saddened many. His coat pocket held the manuscript of Le Premier Homme, an autobiographical novel about his childhood, published posthumously. Deeply moving readers, it showcased his relentless creative passion until his final moments, serving as a key to understanding his life and thought. Though born in Algeria, then a French territory, Camus was legally French, of Pied Noir's descent, not Arab Algerian, a common misconception. In 2005, a France 2 poll included him among the greatest French figures, reflecting the pride and respect he commands. His ideas continue to influence French society and culture, remaining a proud intellectual legacy. Despite his short 46-year life, Camus' works and philosophy profoundly impact people worldwide.